Hey, what's happening, everybody? Hi, welcome to the show. That's Video Games. The all-new podcast that dares to... That's Video Games. Shrug. Should we rebrand the podcast? Should I rename the podcast to That's Video Games? No? Should this song have lyrics? You know? Like a... What's up? What's up? Ha! Ha! You know, like it needs just something. You know, a little something to go with it might, fill in some of those blanks here. Hi, what's going on? It's October 21st, 2025. We're here. We're video gaming. Get used to it. No? Okay. Hi. We're in the middle of the new release season. There's been a lot of stuff coming out, and that's been exciting. New hardware, I guess, maybe newish hardware. It's weird. It's this has been the weirdest the last week or so of video games. I think it has been some of the strangest. Some of the strangest things have been happening around all that hardware, and we'll get into all of that, of course. Happy Once Upon a Katamari release week to everyone out there. That game is out on Friday. That's or is it Friday? Or is it Thursday? I should know this. It's out Friday. It's out Friday. Maybe Thursday night in some parts of the. Some parts of the storefronts, I guess. But yes, that'll be out in a few days here. My son is asking every single day, is that tomorrow? As I know, it's Friday. Is tomorrow Friday? Like, no, buddy. Absolutely not. But I suspect we'll see. You know, he might be able to play that game pre-release. I don't know. That might. I know a guy, but we'll see how that all comes together. If he's a good boy, it's picture day at his school. So the other day he decided to run out of the classroom, which you can't do that. You can't do that, man. So he came home and it'd be like, no video games, dude. Don't do that. Which he understood, though was very mopey. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully he remains a good boy, because if I have to get to a point where it's like, if it ends up getting to a point where it's like, now I need to play this new game because I'm covering it, but you are not allowed to because you have been a bad boy. That is the worst case scenario in all of that entire situation. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe next week I'll let you know if things are on the up and up. I'll let you know what he thinks of the new Katamari game as far as kids games, best family games for families. I don't know. That's been the only one that's really done it. Like, sometimes the kids will sit down and they'll play like Forza Horizon 5, and they'll just drive around, crash into stuff, and they seem to have a good time doing that, and then they'll change cars and do it again. And that's been interesting. We tried Untitled Goose Game, and they like the idea of it, but I think the two of them are not quite sophisticated enough in their problem-solving skills to figure out the like what the hell is this goose doing? The hell? Why is this goose such a dick? Like, it's just like, why do I want to take the man's shoes? It's like, well, that's what the goose does. I don't have a great answer for you there, other than this goose is a prick. I can't say that. Well, this goose sucks, and you are the goose. So think about that. Like, I don't know. It's like Grand Theft Auto. You have to play the bad guy sometimes. We've had a lot. There's been a lot of games. There's been a ton of games out here. I have a few to talk about here. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about this walking simulator where you're a lighthouse that they made. They made a game, and you're a lighthouse. What can walk? And yeah, sure. Your guess is as good as mine, man. Be right back. Keeping an eye on the family budget. Where is the money going? And where's it coming from? Sometimes you just need to know. And having another set of eyes on this stuff is more handy than you might think. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending, and it helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It categorizes all of the things that you're doing, which is handy. You can kind of open it up and at a glance get a good look at like, oh, this pizza is starting to add up. It's a lot of pizza. This is not good. But it'll also tell you things like, hey, your phone bill went up last month. Your phone bill is creeping up. What's going on? And that is my question. What is going on? Rocket Money can also help find and adjust those subscriptions. With their premium features, you can tell Rocket Money, hey, you're right. My phone bill, it's too much money. Can you go work on that? And they will go off and they will negotiate with the people that, handle your phone bill and try to negotiate a lower rate for you. If you've got unwanted subscriptions in your life, Rocket Money can help cancel those. Same deal. You give them some information about the account and they will go off and do what they can to cancel it, which is super handy. Rocket Money has saved me money on a satellite radio subscription, which was hundreds of dollars that were saved there, as well as other phone stuff and just like a variety of things. And it's been really handy for that too. That stuff's been great. It's just been really nice to be able to go, oh, okay. Like I don't necessarily have the time to wait on the phone to try to get a thing and cancel it or do this or do that. And, Rocket Money will handle that. So you can get about the business of doing business with your life. You got a handy dashboard. It'll lay out your entire financial picture. Let you know if you got bills coming up due in the next week or so. If you got recurring bills that always happen around the same time, it'll be like, hey, your gas bill is due. Your electricity, they're gonna shut off your, it'll let you know what's going on, and when money is supposed to be coming your way as well. Like, hey, payday's coming up. Like, oh, okay, yeah, great, handy. You can set up custom budgets. It'll let you know about money in, money out, all of that, and do it all pretty automatically, which is really handy. I don't know, like. What are you slaving away over a hot ledger at night? Entering by hand your payments, your payments due and all that stuff? No. Don't do that. Rocket Money. Rocket Money has saved users over $2.5 billion, including over $880 million in canceled subscriptions alone. Their 10 million members save up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. That's savings right there. Plus alerts and all this other stuff to help you stay on top of this stuff. Money's weird, man. Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/JeffG today. That's rocketmoney.com/JeffG. rocketmoney.com/JeffG. Keeper is out. It's the new game from Double Fine. Here's a weird question before we get into the game itself. Did you know that Double Fine was putting a game out? Did you know that Double Fine had even announced a game? I'm finding that there is a lot of people that like the game got announced, I believe, at Gamescom, if not Summer Game Fest. But they did show it. There was a trailer. There's been a couple of little things about it. And this release really snuck up on me, like it coming out, because I remembered that they announced it, and I was like, what is this? What a walking lighthouse. The hell is going on with these people? Get it together. Get it together, guys. What are you even doing? But the game shipped. The game came out last week, and the release date was extremely, like, it just sort of snuck up on me. I was like, oh, this thing's out already? What? Like, it just felt like nothing, like not a lot of people had spent a lot of time talking about it, and it just sort of dropped. But Keeper is actually, Keeper is a really wonderful thing. It's short. It's short. It's maybe like 5-ish hours. I would say, start to finish. It's how much is it on Steam? Like $30, I think, is what it is. And yeah, it's 30 on Steam. And it's a trippy little thing, man. The game opens, there's a bunch of birds, and a weird swarm of creatures kind of separates one of the birds from the rest of the birds. That bird comes to rest on a lighthouse, which naturally makes the lighthouse fall over and then sprout legs and start walking. And it's a story about a bird and a lighthouse, fast friends who set off on an adventure. And you are controlling primarily the lighthouse. As you are walking around the environment, you control the light on the lighthouse, so it can kind of look around. You can focus the beam. It's not a combat game. It's really, like you're not fighting stuff directly. But it is a puzzle solving game. And so you are walking around and, usually flashing that light or shining that light on certain things to solve puzzles. The bird can turn cranks and move things around. And so you're kind of getting into, you're walking around and seeing like these really crazy, like really wild designs. Like, it's a beautiful game with some very like surreal environments and creatures and everything like kind of happening along the way. And so you're seeing all these puppety oddballs running out as you're walking around, and they're looking at you, and you can shine the light at them and they go, oh, and they freak out. Or, there's a lot of like cute interactions happening along the way here with a lot of weird little guys. One of the first things that you encounter is a tree with a face on it, and the tree needs eyes, the face needs eyes, and so you have to go solve some puzzles to get some balls. You can send the bird off, like you don't just fly the bird around at will, but it'll like, there will be a highlight in the environment that says like, hey, here's a thing you can pick up. You push the button, the bird goes over, picks it up, brings it back to your lighthouse. You carry the eyeball back to the tree man. The bird puts it in his eye sockets, like that. You're not necessarily doing a bunch of like, again, it's not like an action game. You're walking around, you're interacting with puzzles, you're turning cranks, you're moving things around, you're trying to get doors open, you're finding eyeballs and medallions and hanging them in the right place, and and it's that sort of thing. A couple of times it reminded me of like a Myst or something, but like it's not like confusing. Like it is very light puzzle solving. You are walking around kind of doing your thing and interacting with stuff to watch it jump and looking at it and going like, wow, that looks crazy. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. This is really neat. But in terms of like, putting blocks in your path, right? Of hey, here's a puzzle. You should solve this before you move on. Before you can move on, even. The game is really good at knowing exactly how long you should be somewhere. In terms of how many times it's going to have you perform similar puzzles on your quest to kind of solve this kind of short-term problem. Like, this town is crazy. Surely we can fix this. Okay, I need to go over here. I need to go over here. I need to go over here. Bring this back to here and do this. And by the time you get to a point where you're like, I got it. I know how to do like this puzzle. Like, it's not, you don't need to throw more of these at me. I've got this shit on lock right here. It goes, all right, cool. You're never going to see that again. Now go over here. And doors open, goes over here. You're off to an entirely new thing. And so it is, and there's not, I don't want to get into kind of specifics for, just because I think uncovering this stuff for yourself and seeing it for yourself is really a really good part of this trip. But I will say, there is, for a game that people are going to describe as you are a lighthouse walking around, you do a lot more too. And it's really awesome as it starts to spread its wings a little bit and kind of show you more stuff and give you, just additional mobility and things, just as you kind of just see the different types of things the game will throw at you. It's never like, it is never a big timing based thing. You're not like, I'm on a race against the clock to push this button before the door shuts, or like, it is chill in that regard as well. And I think it's got a really cool look to it. It tells a fun story. The lighthouse is very expressive for a lighthouse. It's a very expressive lighthouse, but like, the eyebrows on the lighthouse's light, I guess is what you would say, do a great job of conveying, the friendship with the bird and little emotion along the way. And like, by the time you get to the end, you might feel a thing or two. It's, it reminded me a little bit of like Fantasia in some parts, where it's just like, we're going to show you some crazy, here's some stuff happening here. And it is, there is no dialogue in the game whatsoever. And so it is really, it is you walking around, and there's a soundtrack, and there's the noises of the weird little freaks running around on the ground around this lighthouse and so on. It's funny, man. So there's very little, like, it'll show control, configuration stuff at the bottom of the screen while you're playing. And like, that's how you find out that the bird has a name. It's not really a big deal. And sometimes it kind of goes back and forth, whether it's like, it says like bird or the bird's name, which is Twig. It's not some big spoiler. It's not like something, oh my God, the bird's name is Twig. The bird's name is Barack Obama. What? This whole thing is, there's a, it's funny. And I might even say, like, don't look at them until you've finished the game, but the achievements for this game have lore in them. Like the achievement text has like names of things, and it's like, so-and-so did this and did this to fight off and you're like, what? I think it plays better without that stuff. And where you just let your mind kind of fill in those blanks. Like, you don't need to know that this thing has a, whatever, the adversary has a name, or, it doesn't matter. I played through it in like 2 sittings. I probably would have played through it in 1, but the PC version crashed on me halfway through. And so that kind of got me off of it on night 1. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. But I really, like, I got pretty absorbed into it. I was surprised. And it is a surprising thing. Like, I think it's really good that, like, around every corner, as you move through one area and into the next, I think there's a really cool, it's a really cool progression of things, and it shows you a lot of interesting stuff. It's got a really, really neat look to it. Some great looking water in some spots, like, hey, a lighthouse, like a big thing about the lighthouse is that it can shine a light on stuff, and so you need to have like a decent lighting model in your game, and the light from the lighthouse looks pretty good, but it is not some massive technical showpiece either. This is also, weirdly enough, the one game I could not get of the stuff I tried, which is not a billion games, but of the games I tried to play on the ROG Xbox Ally X, I could not get Keeper to run what I would call acceptably well. That's not to say it is some massively heavy game. It doesn't seem like it, but it does look nice, and it does have it's got a lot of fun, weird stuff to show you, for sure. And yeah, I don't know. You should check it out at some point for sure. Let's talk about, well, you know, I was going to say, so we'll talk more about Keeper, I think, when we get to talking about this handheld thing that they put out. Ball Pit is out. Ball X Pit, if you will. And I have been playing quite a bit of that. It is a combination of, we talked about this last week. There's a video up on YouTube of me playing it if you would like to see that. It is a cross between kind of the Vampire Survivors, kind of all, you know, like auto shooting survival game kind of deal. Except I guess you aim the balls, so you know it's not quite automatic, but it is like that type of run-based game where you are getting upgrades to your attacks and weapons and the different items and balls that you can get synergized. And so you're playing like an Arkanoid style, a breakout style game where you are leveling up as you go. And, you know, these bricks have fucking demons and skeletons and shit popping out of them. And they are constantly marching down the screen. If they get to the bottom, they will damage you. If you get too close to them, they will damage you. And so you are constantly launching balls into the pit, if you will, and hitting these things to beat them before they beat you. They drop gems that give you XP, and then you are leveling up your balls, and you are leveling up the items, and sometimes the balls, when the balls reach max level, you can fuse the balls together to form more destructive balls and also make room in your inventory for more balls. Some of the balls have special evolutions where if you level up two of, you know, the right kinds of balls and fuse those together, you will get something even crazier. And then you can fuse those balls with balls on top of that, balls all the way down. There's an out-of-game experience where you are kind of like plopping down buildings and crops and stuff, and you're harvesting wheat and rocks and stuff to you know, build more stuff in your environment, and you're unlocking characters that way. You're like, okay, I'm going to build this haunted house, and now we have the ghost guy. And you know, so there is kind of that meta progression kind of stuff. And then there's a weird kind of breakout style thing where you're harvesting by launching balls into the harvest to collect it. And I don't think that stuff I don't love. I don't know. Like, as you know, you can expand your territory and plop more things down. Like that part of the game is not really doing it for me. But the balls part of the balls is fantastic. When you're out there balling, it's a real good time. So I've been having a really good time with Ball Pit. Let's take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Ninja Gaiden 4 because that's kind of a it's a weird one. We'll come back. We'll talk about that real quick here. Let's just take this break. Are you trying to keep your stuff charged? Are you one of those people that is obsessively like, oh, my phone's at 80% and we need to get this charged up? It's annoying. It's frustrating to deal with. You know, you've got how many different things, you know, you've got like how many sets of headphones, you know, you've got like your phone, you've got like a laptop, you know, like are you rolling around with other USB charged devices at this point? Yeah, I mean, I got handheld video, all this stuff. My watch needs to be charged. It's mania out there. And getting all of that stuff charged, especially if you're out and about, can be a real hassle. But hey, there's a new way. Thanks to Ridge. Just like Ridge revolutionized the wallet, Ridge is changing the game for portable charging. Ridge's 5-in-1 travel power bank has built-in cables that lets you charge all of your devices at the same time with just one power bank, no extra cables. It's got MagSafe wireless charging, an Apple Watch charger, Lightning, USB-C, every way you need to charge, all in one premium device. So no more juggling cables and adapters and wall outlets, all this other stuff just to get a little bit of juice at the airport or something. It's got 20 watts of power, charges your phone as fast as it possibly can, and it's got a good capacity. 10,000. Is that milliamp hours? MAH? Dude, I have no idea. But it's the metric they use on all batteries. But you've got up to 3 full phone chargers in your pocket if you're rocking the fully charged Ridge power bank. That newest iPhone is out there now, you know? Make sure you get a power bank that actually keeps up with it. It's built to last. It's got free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty. This is the last power bank you'll ever need. They look good. They're available in colors. You get base camp orange, matte black. You got a matte olive. Something that, you know, I don't know, stands out a little bit. It'll easily tell you what its charge level is. It's got LED lights on it that lets you know exactly where it stands. It's got a kickstand if you need to look at your phone while it's charging. All of that stuff. And while you're over at Ridge, you can get a wallet. They got these slim, modern wallets that are built to last. Again, and it's the last wallet you ever buy. One thing to pack, 5 ways to power. You can find Ridge's power bank at Best Buy, or you can get 10% off at ridge.com by using the code JeffG at checkout. Just head to ridge.com and use the code JeffG, and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Hey, support the show. Let them know that we sent you. Ninja Gaiden 4 is by Platinum Games, and it shows pretty much every step of the way. Like this feels more like a Platinum Games game than a Team Ninja game. And it's got some neat ideas. But I don't... Ninja Gaiden 4 does not work nearly as well as it seems like it should, and I feel like that's like whatever angle you're coming at it from, I think on both angles it kind of drops the ball a little bit. If you're coming at it from the I love Platinum games and I want to see a new Platinum game, it's cool in a lot of ways. I don't feel like they go far enough with it or do it enough with it to really make that stand out. It is, I think, better than some of the other recent better than some other character action Platinum games, but it just kind of doesn't feel right. And then on the Ninja Gaiden, like, I think if you're coming at this from the angle of like a Ninja Gaiden purist, or you really like Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 or Black or whatever, I think that is where you're probably going to come away from it being sort of disappointed, because I really don't think that they've done a good job of like maintaining the legacy that these games have had. I'm not a Ninja Gaiden purist. I don't have a strong love for the franchise, I guess I should say. As it stands in modern times, like the original NES games, I love the arcade game. Motherfucker, a lot of people hate that arcade. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, that arcade game is like, no, that game's rad. You can hang from light posts, you can hang from poles, and it's fun. So, like, for me, like, there's stuff in here where you're like, oh, dude, this is a Platinum game, but also you can do the Azuna drop. That's sick as fuck. Like, that should be like, oh, fucking awesome. Like, but it just doesn't, like, that stuff doesn't line up the way you want it to. The combat is challenging, but sometimes mashy, and like there's a weird mix there where it doesn't feel as like it gets difficult, but not in the ways that the original games did. It doesn't feel like it's like, hey, we've tried to put a fighting game's worth of thought into these encounters you're going to have. Not every encounter in the original Ninja Gaiden games are that, but this feels light in some ways. You are unlocking new moves, and that's a whole weird process. But like there are combos, and there are things like, to do the Azuna drop is like you have a light attack and a heavy attack, as one does. And so launching someone into the air is light heavy. You hit light, you hit heavy, it pops them up, you chase them up. You hit light, 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 heavy, and that will trigger the Azuna drop, and they'll grab them, flip upside down, come crashing down. It'll damage enemies around you. And it's very satisfying. You're like, oh yeah, I did the thing, cool. But it's like, you're kind of just mashing it out. You can't mash it out full speed. It doesn't buffer every single input, so you kind of have to like wait for those light attacks to hit in the air before you hit it. If you just mash it out, it won't happen. So there is a little bit of a timing component to it. It's got like 9 different ways to counter attacks, and like there's some of that is really interesting, and some of it is really exciting to interact with. Like unlike a lot of other modern games, parrying attacks in Ninja Gaiden 4 is done by you hitting an attack button. And so it creates a whole new level of risk that most other games don't do, because in most games, parrying attacks is done by timing your block properly. And so if you fail to time your block properly, you are probably just going to block the attack instead of parrying the attack. Here, if you mistime your attack to parry their attack, you are getting hit. And so there is risk involved in, are you going to go for the parry at all? Or are you just going to block? But then they've layered systems and systems and systems where you've got the parry. You also have, so you have to time that really well to do it. And if you time it perfectly, you can do a follow-up. You can buy a follow-up attack that will happen after a parry. You can also time your block perfectly to basically, it's not a parry. It doesn't leave them as open as a parry does, but you block the attack and stun them, which opens them up a little bit as well. And so you can opt to time your blocks well. If you hit the block button while moving, instead of blocking, you will dodge. And if you dodge at the exact right time, it will leave a little shadow behind you, and it will be a perfect dodge. Which, as I'm saying that out loud, kind of sounds ridiculous that you've got all of these systems to kind of deal with incoming attacks, but it is interesting in the context. And also you can unlock follow-up attacks for each one of those options, to where like if you dodge mid combo because you're getting attacked from behind while you're attacking someone, if you do the dodge and you time it well, you basically can just like keep holding down the block button and you can continue your combo after that dodge. These are all things you have to buy. There's a store that there's a dude, and you run into the dude and he's like, you want to learn some new moves, kid? And you buy, these 17 moves. Like he doesn't have that many. And also, if you buy the extra expensive version of the game, the $90 version of the game, as opposed to the $70 version of the game, it comes with, it's the dumbest currency. It is the stupidest currency. You get, for the additional $20, in addition to some skins, you will also get 50,000 Ninja Coin. Ninja Coin, one word intercapped, so capital S, Ninja Coin. Sounds like the fucking lamest crypto fucking rug pull you've ever heard of. Anyway. 50,000 Ninja Coin is enough to buy like 8 moves or something at the beginning of the game. And so, as you're getting used to the combat for the first time, as you're like going through the kind of tutorial early stuff, you then encounter this dude, and then it goes, here you go, here's 50,000 Ninja Coin. And you're like, oh, okay. But like all of these moves need to be practiced. And it does, when you buy them, it says, hey, do you want to try it out? And you're like, yes, I do, because like there's specific timing involved. Like I want to make sure I get this right if I'm going to use it. And so I spent like a fucking hour unlocking a move, going into the training, doing the move, then going, okay, backing back out to the store menu, buying, like looking at the moves again, sometimes buying a move will unlock a new move, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I should get the follow-up, because that's, if I do it with perfect timing, then it will do this and this, and so I go, well, now I got to practice this, and so like I found myself in like a training mode for like an insane amount of time, unlocking these moves because it gave me so much currency out of the gate. It's dumb. I finally just left. I'm like, I have like 30,000 ninja coin left, but I'm sick of fucking this. I want to go fight dudes. And so I just bailed on it and went and fought with the moves that I had. And that's ridiculous. Like it's a weird case. It's not that weird of a case, but you know, it's certainly happened before, but it's a weird case where like the thing you get for the expensive version of the game like kind of fucks up the pacing in sort of a weird way. But like at the end of the day, the rate at which you accrue ninja coin is such that you will have all of these moves relatively quickly. Each weapon also gains a currency or an XP. Like you spend it, and so each weapon itself has moves. And so sometimes you'll finish a confrontation, it'll be like, you can afford a new weapon move, and that you don't have to talk to a dude about. You just go into a menu and say, let me do a thing. And those moves are interesting because they're like, you know, it's a fully 3D game, you're running around, but it still has moves like back forward attack or a 360 swirl on the stick and attack, which, you know, is kind of some of the stuff they did in some of those original games. Back forward attack is sort of a weird input when you don't know what angle you're going to be fighting from. And so it's kind of a strange feeling thing to do. It works out okay. It's not that big of a deal. And it's not that big of a deal because, like, dude, like, none of these moves, like, you just, I don't know. You can hold down the left trigger to turn into some kind of demon mode, and that drains a meter while it's active, but you have the ability to stuff people on their attacks. If you hit them while they're attacking, it will bust through the attack. They will be stunned, and you can, you know, land some additional combo hits. And then there's yet another meter that when that fills up, you can click in both sticks to go into berserk mode. And then when you're in berserk mode, you can also pull the left trigger to go into berserk mode with the other form. And then, they've layered on a lot of shit here without ever once telling you why you care about any of it. And I think that that's a kind of a downfall of the combat system. Where, you know, like if they wanted to have like early training, and they train you how to run on walls, and like you eventually unlock a grappling hook, and, you know, like they train you how to play the game, but like you eventually just get all of these different moves, and you're like, I don't know why I care about any of these moves. Does this one open up, you know, and you'll find like, oh, okay, for formidable enemies, which is their term for like kind of more boss-like characters, that they will stuff your attacks unless you go into the pull trigger demon form and do this, and then you can stuff their attacks back. And so you do have reasons for using some of these things situationally. But altogether, I don't feel like this game gels. And I really don't, again, like I'm not precious about the early Ninja Gaiden games. But this feels like Platinum made a game, and then they said, dude, we should put the Azuna drop in this. That'd be sick. And they're right, it is. But it doesn't. Yeah, it just feels like that they've put a little, and it's a funny, it's one of those funny criticisms, because like some people will be like, well, I want to have options. You're like, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of options, but I would argue that maybe you have like too many options. I haven't even gotten into like, oh, if you hold down the attack buttons, then you're going to charge up an ultimate attack, and that will rush forward, and you can unlock a level 2 to that charge. You can unlock a thing to where when you're charging that, it will absorb orbs in the world, and that will cause it to charge faster. So if you charge an ultimate when you're near an orb, it will do that. You know, like there's you know what I mean? I think it's got a nice look to it overall. The characters are weird, really light. Like you're kind of a grim, like, I'm gonna talk like this, and I'm approaching my target, and we're doing this, and I'm gonna assassinate this, and I'm a ninja. My name's Yakumo. I'm like, what? All right, Kokomo, let's get this done, buddy. I'm on a surfing safari. John Stamos looking. And then everyone around you is like anime girl. Ha ha ha! Oh, we're gonna do it. Like you go to, and it made me kind of want a new Dead or Alive, because like the first character you talk to in that game is this priestess you're supposed to be killing, who you end up leaving with instead, and she's like giant big boob anime lady, and you're like, man, they should make a new Dead or Alive. That was my first thought upon seeing big boob anime lady. It was like, they should make DOA. They should make a new Dead or Alive, and they could probably put her in it. She looks well suited for it. Like a lot of the characters are like lighthearted and jokey in a way that's like kind of sucks. I don't know, man. It sort of feels weird in the context of a Ninja Gaiden game, to have all of the other characters kind of be crappy. I don't know. Like it's a weird way to go about it. I think there's, and so that's the game, man. Like, but also like it's got some of the Platinum game stuff that I really like. Like you get to the first boss fight and suddenly the song that is playing has lyrics, and you're like, fuck, dude, yeah. And so there's like flashes of like, if not brilliance, then like well-made and satisfying video game action, where you're like, cool, yeah. But like it doesn't coalesce for a long enough period of time for you to go, yeah, okay, yeah, no, this is a great game. And I think that's ultimately the problem with it. And I'm not saying that this game is trash. I'm not saying like whatever. This game's all right. Ninja Gaiden 4 is all right. But when we think about the heights of whether it's the franchise or the developer, I don't think it reaches either of those. And I actually think that in terms of like the legacy of Ninja Gaiden, if you care about that, this does not feel like one of those. It has pieces of it, and when you dig around, you scratch around, you go like, okay, well, it's got this, like there's stuff here, like, but some of it is like he kicks open the chests and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like the real one, okay, yeah. It doesn't feel like a real Ninja Gaiden game, if that makes any sense. And it doesn't feel like Platinum's best work, but as someone who has really liked Platinum's games in the past, when they hit, they hit. There's flashes of that here, There's flashes of that here that I go, oh yeah, okay. A lot of this is really complicated. This it's not the fault of the game, but it is, Tomonobu Itagaki, the creator of the modern Ninja Gaiden franchise, who, has not been with Tecmo for a decade or so, but he passed away. Last week, I think they announced it last week. And that has been weighing heavily. Like I would not expect to have been especially affected by that news. He and I were not close. I spoke to him directly once or twice over the years. And I remember I sat next to him at a Microsoft event, and that was after all this stuff. Like after, like his whole thing. And I remember sitting with him and going like, you know what? This dude is all right. This dude's all right. Because Itagaki, if you don't remember, was when the Ninja Gaiden games were coming out, when the Dead or Alive games were coming out, he was very outspoken about the quality of his games and about the quality of other games in a way that most developers were certainly not then, in a pre-social media world, in a pre-hot take kind of cult of personality, like rock star game developer style thing. He was a very public dick about that stuff, and his shit talking on Tekken was, especially Tekken 4, which I think anyone can agree is like, fuck that game. Was legendary. I never thought that his games were as good as he thought they were. Even when they were very good, I think the way he talked about them, I personally always found a little bit off-putting, and the way he carried himself, leather jacket, sunglasses, like he was that dude in an era when we hadn't seen a lot of that dude in video games, and he knew full well what he was doing. I think ultimately, like, that's the thing, is like all of that is a facade. Like all of that was, hey, when I do this shit, every single magazine in the Western press writes about my game. And so he was a great manipulator before that became a thing. Before Randy Pitchford was on Twitter talking about, his premium game for premium players and getting people to keep writing the word Borderlands into the internet over and over again. Which I also think he is for the record, I think Randy Pitchford is doing that extremely deliberately. Though not with the panache and flair of Itagaki, for sure. He was a very unique individual in the terms of video game developers and the way that, like a lot of that, and yeah, like I said, it's not like he and I were close. It's not like, like I had a couple of conversations with him. I had friends who were friends with him, and seeing them be hit hard by it has been very sad to see. But it hit me harder than I thought it would, I guess. And I'm pretty sad about it, even though, he had not been with Tecmo for a good long time, and he put out Devil's Third, which didn't really land. He had another thing in the works supposedly, but I don't know what that was. I think the last game he worked on with Tecmo was DOA Code Chronos, which was supposed to be some kind of action game about the two main girls in Dead or Alive. But that ended up getting canceled. His first game with them, I believe, was Tecmo Super Bowl. And then, kind of he was as close as Tecmo had to a face, because he was responsible for DOA and he was responsible for Ninja Gaiden, which became the franchises that company was known for prior to the Koei acquisition. And yeah, so it was he was synonymous with that company for a good chunk of time. And I think it's very sad that he has passed away. And I think that there's something mixed up in all of this with the new game, and the way the new game doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel related enough to those original games, and that kind of makes me sad in light of all of this, as well. And I think that's largely separate. I think the game has plenty of its own issues on its own. I don't think that this is like, some major sticking point one way or the other, but it is, there is something sad about it, because, like, say what you will about those early Ninja Gaiden games, they were made incredibly deliberately and incredibly specifically. They were targeting a very specific type of player who wanted to experience that thing, that style of game, It was considered quite difficult in its day, though I don't know that that necessarily holds true all these years later. And certainly re-releases of the game have done things to kind of adjust that ever so slightly. Bad Jokes UK in the chat says it doesn't have the weight to the action that his games had. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. The Ninja Gaiden games, like every single hit against a meaningful enemy, meaning not like a bird or something, like felt like you were doing shit. You were making things happen, and it stuck, and you just were like, I'm in that ass. It had that fighting game like approach to action gaming in some ways. And you felt like you had accomplished something when you made it through encounters there. Even if you got a low ranking, even if you were a ninja dog, I think there's still impact to the action in those games. And Ninja Gaiden 4 doesn't Ninja Gaiden 4 has spectacle. Ninja Gaiden 4 has like, the way they present like this like demonic strange Tokyo is like a fascinating visual thing. Like it is crazy to look at. But in action, you are flitting around going ba 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 ba, like you're all over the place, and it doesn't feel right. At the end of the day, like it doesn't feel right for Ninja Gaiden. It feels right for a Platinum game. But those are two incredibly different things. Yeah. So, I don't mean this to be like damning of the new game or anything. Like I said, I think there are some really neat things happening in Ninja Gaiden 4. But the formula doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? The formula just doesn't feel right. And also, I think, there is something about the whole like $70 video game where it's like, this is a lot of dang money. $90 deluxe edition, like there's just a lot of that stuff that I think is really just gets kind of hard to swallow. Speaking of hard to swallow, this thing, Asus put out the ROG Xbox Ally and the ROG Xbox Ally X last week. The high-end model is $1,000. And this has kicked off a very... There's the identity of Xbox, I think, is really never been more in question than it is right now. The ad campaign where they tried to say, this is an Xbox, this is an Xbox, this is an Xbox, this cat's not an Xbox, wah, wah, like... The release of this device, I think, has been more damaging to the Xbox brand than anything else. And it's been interesting to watch Microsoft as they talk about this thing. For those unaware, the ROG Xbox Ally X, if you're listening to the video version, it is a Steam Deck-like handheld device. Much like the earlier ROG Ally devices, it is a Windows 11 machine. And it's got a pretty powerful chipset in it for the form factor, and it runs a good deal of games because it's running on Windows. There are games that will run here that will not run on a Steam Deck. So you can play Battlefield 6 on this. You can play Call of Duty. You could play Apex Legends on this. You could play, it is a Windows machine. On the Microsoft side of things, they have been working away on Windows 11 in an attempt to make it friendlier on this type of device. Because Windows 11 is not built for handhelds. It is not built for handhelds that don't have any kind of mouse, like trackpad or anything like that on here. So alongside this device, Microsoft has rolled out what it is calling the Xbox FSE, the full screen experience. And this is a full screen version of the Xbox app that is already built into Windows 11. With some optimizations. I don't know. I have not been testing frame times or any crazy stuff like that, but it boots into this optimized mode where it is supposedly able to run games better because it is not running as much of the Windows 11 guts underneath it. I don't know. Those are actually the numbers I'd be curious to see, because of the hassle that this interface choice presents. So this is a Windows machine. It is not an Xbox. It does not play Xbox console games. Your existing Xbox console library does not work on this machine natively. There are a handful of cases where you may have purchased an Xbox game that is available via Xbox Play Anywhere, meaning if you buy the Xbox version, you get the PC version for free. And so in those cases, you can install the PC version of the game because this is a PC. And this is where we start to get into a lot of the dumb semantics around this. It's a PC. It's a Windows machine. Their storefront. And so I guess like what I was saying is like so many aspects of this device are not ready for prime time. The Xbox full screen experience is a full screen version of the Xbox app. If you only ever intend to run games out of the Xbox app, which can kind of interface with your Steam library if you install Steam on it and all that other stuff, but it's not a very smooth experience. It's like there's the interface I found to be clunky. I found it to be occasionally unresponsive because sometimes you push a direction on the D-pad and sometimes the Xbox interface has lost focus. So there were times where I had to tap the screen to focus Windows on the window running the Xbox app, even in FSE mode, before it would take input from the controller, which is bad. And so this is a Windows machine. It is not an Xbox. If this is the future of Xbox as it stands right here, right now, today, they are in trouble. However, if you look at this as the first step in a journey, because I think that anyone with half a brain, no one over at Microsoft is going to look at this and go, all right, mission accomplished, we're done. Like, no. There is a lot of work that needs to happen before this becomes an acceptable way for a wider, more mainstream audience to use this. The Steam Deck is a much better solution at consoleizing an interface, even taking into account that there are some games that simply will not run on a Steam Deck because of anti-cheat and what have you. Certainly, like, God, I mean, if we're just thinking about other current handhelds, like imagine someone who goes like, oh man, I heard the Switch 2 was cool, but like this thing's even more powerful and I want to play Battlefield and that's not on Switch, or whatever kind of modern shooter thing that is not, and they go and buy one of these instead. You are going to end up in a window, even as part of the setup process, which is by and large the standard Windows 11 setup process of connecting to Wi-Fi, logging into a Microsoft account, choosing I think you even choose a window accent color. There's Like, it shows logos for Microsoft Office and stuff during the setup process because it is by and large the standard Windows out-of-box experience. The OOBE just runs when you turn this thing on. And it is doable with a gamepad and touchscreen. I found myself after a Windows update, because there is a new version of Windows available, 25H2 is a relatively recent release. And so after hours of downloading Windows updates and installing them and rebooting this thing, it rebooted, and then it had destroyed, like, you know, the pin number, and like has a thumbprint sensor. It decided, okay, you cannot use the thumbprint sensor. You must use your pin number, and your pin number's gone, by the way. You need to set a new pin number. Like, okay, I'll just set a new pin number then, no problem. And then it throws up a Windows ass window that cannot be navigated with a gamepad and touchscreen. And all of the shortcuts and things you could do to pop up the touchscreen keyboard did not work. And so at first I had to like tap on the screen like 20 times just to get a window to pop up to let me type in the new PIN number, and then found I had no way to type in a PIN number because the on-screen keyboard would not pop up. And so I'm staring at this thing going, what the fuck? Well, maybe I can remote desktop into it. No, I can't, because it's running Windows 11 Home and not Windows 11 Pro. So you cannot remote desktop into it. You must find a keyboard. It only has USB-C ports on it. So you need to find a hub that is going to go from C to A, because unless you have a fucking USB-C keyboard like a true fucking maniac, what I ended up doing is I grabbed the Steam Deck dock and plugged that into it, because that is USB-C that plugged in right here, and then it had two USB-A ports on the back of it. The Steam Deck dock worked great, except for I could not get the power to work properly. I had to leave it unpowered, but I could even hook it up to my TV that way. Like the Steam Deck dock worked, except for it was not transferring power through the dock properly for whatever reason. And once I had plugged a mouse and keyboard into it, worked great. You know why? Because it's a computer. It's not an Xbox. At any point, especially once you have a keyboard plugged in, if you tap the Windows key, the start menu appears. And as soon as the start menu appears, the Xbox full screen experience optimizations are gone. It starts running the Xbox app in a window. It turns into regular Windows. It's regular Windows. So much so, in fact, that there's a button that says, you know, full screen, you know, and when you push the button to put the Xbox app back into full screen, it pops up a warning and says, hey, you should really reboot if you want the optimizations that this mode is supposed to bring. You can do this. If you want to just make it full screen and get back to playing apps, you can do it. But we recommend you reboot to get back into, like, oh, did you brush your elbow against the start menu? You should reboot. If you want to play games, you should probably reboot. It's crazy. I paid $100 to upgrade the Windows 11 Home install to Windows 11 Pro. And so now I can remote desktop into it and administrate this machine that way. Pop a terminal window anytime you want, and do whatever you need to do. You want to run winget on it. I also had to go through the list of installed things and uninstall a whole bunch of shit, like Office. It ran a process to uninstall like Microsoft 365 and Office that took like 5 minutes of it just sitting there with a bar crawling across the screen. Why is that pre-installed? Like some of these things are getting outsized. Like people are like, I can't believe Microsoft Teams is installed. But I don't think Teams is literally installed on it. There are a lot of icons that by default show up on a Windows install. that are not like it. Like one of the things it says is like, here's WhatsApp, but WhatsApp is not installed. When you click it, it installs it. And so it's just it's an icon that will install it if you click it. And so when you uninstall it, it just removes the icon. I don't think Teams is literally installed on it out of the box, but some Office shit definitely was, because it took forever to uninstall. If you want to pop up PowerShell and forcibly uninstall the Your Phone icon, the Your Phone app, you can do it. It's a Windows machine. And you can do all the things a Windows machine can do. It has an NPU in it, and so Windows Recall is installed on it by default. So I went into the add and remove optional Windows settings and disabled Recall and disabled some of the other AI shit that it shipped with, alongside it. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this if you just want to fire it up and play a game. Solitaire is also pre-installed. When you launch that Xbox for the first time, it's like, yeah, man, play Solitaire. Here's the hilarious thing. When you go to launch Solitaire, the Xbox app throws up a thing that says like, hey, man, this is not optimized to run on this. Because it doesn't have like certified controller support. It does have some controller support. Fucking Solitaire. So, like if you need to use the Windows calculator, it's there. If you want to run Clipchamp, it's there. Because it's a Windows machine. It's a default. It is in most ways, in almost every way, it is a default Windows 11 install. Because it's a Windows machine. That's it. And, like that comes with all the positives and negatives that implies, right? When we think about the older ROG Ally, when you think about the nature of the Steam Deck, this whole market segment of the handheld computer, it's a handheld computer. It's cool. Like I installed Steam on it. There's a button, because it's an Asus device, Armory Crate is a part of the experience. Armory Crate is a lot better now than it was when the Ally, the first generation Ally came out. It still is not an amazing experience, but they have made it better. They have made it more pleasant to work with, especially if you need to launch Steam, because the Steam icon is right there out of the box as well on the Armory Crate, like little pull down launcher thing. And so you can very easily install Steam. And then from there, you can decide, right? Do you want to launch your Steam games out of the Xbox app, because the Xbox app is built to pull in your installed Steam games and show them there? Or do you want to enable Steam Big Picture mode, and if you hold down the Xbox button, it pops up basically like a fancy Alt-Tab type of app switcher, and you can go and you can pick Steam over the Xbox, and you can switch over to that and go play some games there, then switch back to the Xbox app and play some games there, whatever way you want to do it. I found that Steam is kind of frustrating in some ways, because sometimes in Steam Big Picture mode, the top and bottom of the interface is cut off when it's running full screen. There were times where I had to go into the Steam settings and toggle the windowed mode off and on again to get it to show the full Steam Big Picture interface. Also, Call of Duty would not immediately launch out of Steam. I don't know, I had to uninstall it and reinstall it. I had to basically get out of Big Picture mode, launch Call of Duty once there, and then it would work launching out of the Xbox app. The first time I tried to launch it out of the Xbox app, it popped what looked like an oversized terminal window for a second, and then that went away, and then it just, basically closed the app and failed to run it. I was able to fix that because I've used a Windows machine for years and years and years. If you are not experienced in what the fuck just happened, Windows, if you are not experienced in that, then I think that this device is way too rough around way too many edges to be recommendable to a person like that. This is a computer for people who know how to use a computer. And you can obfuscate that a little bit, but not as much as you might think, and not as much as you're going to need to if this is what you want to call an Xbox, there is so much more work to be done. And Microsoft knows that. They at some point announced like, hey, on day one, this thing's going to have this functionality, and here's what's coming soon. Auto SR, the auto super resolution stuff that they are working on, and the thing that will actually hopefully use this NPU to something that is not just trash. That is something that they will be rolling out whenever that is finally ready. But this is, and maybe it can't be done. Maybe Windows 11 is so fucking nuts, and it is such a big, bloated, crazy. It's an operating system. It's not. You can't just like strip it down and go here, video games. Like it's a fucking operating system. There's a lot of work to be done if you want to try to make that friendly on a console. It's not an easy lift, man. But I just look at it and go like, man, there's so much that needs to happen to truly make this like if this is going to be the future of the Xbox brand and the types of devices that they're going to be shipping in the years to come, they have got so much work to do in order to get it there. And this is a really bad first step in that very specific way. Again, if you know what you're getting into and you're like, whatever, man, it's a computer, and like, you want to tinker with it and all that stuff, like, dude, it is more powerful than a Steam Deck. You can play Battlefield 6 on it. It runs like quite well. Like you can do the things, like it does the stuff. I put RetroArch on it and I mapped a network drive on it because it's Windows. And so it's mapped to my server out in the garage with all the ROMs on it. And so I can just do that and don't have to, carry around. I mean, if I wanted to leave the house, that mapping would no longer work, but fuck it, dude. So like, yeah, dude, it's a computer. It's fine. Runs a lot of, how does it handle Saturn emulation? It's great. It runs fine. Yeah, I was playing some Saturn games on it. Runs just fine. Steam Deck was perfectly capable of that stuff as well. This is more powerful than that. It runs fine. But think about this, man. You buy one of these. Okay, so think about this also, just in terms of the Xbox store and Microsoft's current efforts when it comes to selling PC games themselves, meaning not via Steam. Borderlands 4, a long-running franchise, an anticipated game in a long-running franchise. You go to the search box on the Xbox app and you type in Borderlands 4, nothing comes back because Borderlands 4 is not on their store. This is a PC. When Grand Theft Auto 6 launches, Grand Theft Auto 6 will not be on their store because they're not launching on PC. They're launching on console. Borderlands 4, if you want to play it on this device and you're like not aware of other way, Steam, like whatever, if you're just like, well, I want to play this. If you go to the cloud tab, they will let you buy an Xbox copy, an Xbox console copy of Borderlands 4. And once you've done that, you can play it via the cloud. And they've got a little pop-up thing that says, this console game won't run on here, man. This is basically like it's a pop-up that if they wrote it clearly, it would say, dog, this isn't an Xbox. But instead it says, this is an Xbox console game and it doesn't run over here. If you want to play it in the cloud, you can buy this and do this and buy this console version and do it. You're like, so like and obviously, yes, if you're in the know and like, oh, dude, I should just install Steam and buy it there. Right, then yes, that is the like smart answer. But dude, if you're not that person, if you're just like, well, I guess I don't know, like if you're not savvy in the ways of using a computer or whatever, and you get this because you liked the Xbox console or you liked other consoles and you're like, well, if this is an Xbox, then I know it's going to be like this, you're going to be in over your head immediately. Or you're going to end up buying a console version of a game to play it via the cloud, which is fucking nonsense. and requires you to have a Game Pass subscription if you want to get the best resolutions and all this other stuff and whatever else. I think that's all just, again, I think if you're looking at the long-term strategy of what the fuck is Microsoft doing here, a few years down the line when there are more devices out here like this and they've had more time to make it good, hopefully, then we look back on this moment and go, oh yeah, had kind of a rough start, but they got there. But there's no guarantee that they got there. And also I think that, like, with the way this is being presented, again, the way it's being marketed, the way it's being focused, like they literally run like Good Morning America talking about the portable Xbox. Like that is an almost criminal amount of like misinformation about what this thing actually is. And it's funny because like what it actually is way more capable than a fucking Xbox. It's so much more. It can run Teams. But no, seriously, but like, you could do computer stuff on it if you wanted to. You could install Handbrake on it and compress videos. Who cares? Like you could do whatever. But it has access to a much larger library of games than a traditional Xbox ever will. So, yeah, can I install it? Yeah, sure. Put Bazite on it. I bet it would work great. Of course, if you're going to do that, you should probably just buy a Steam Deck. So, like, because I feel like the benefit to buying this type of machine is that you're like, okay, well, whatever. This thing runs Windows, and thus it can play games that have modern anti-cheat. Your Battlefield 6s, your Destiny 2s, I guess. All the EA stuff that doesn't run, Skate, probably. I don't know. Apex, It is more powerful than a Steam Deck is to some degree. Is it like a generational leap over the Steam Deck? No, I don't think so. But, you're going to get more frames. You're going to get more of this. You're going to get more of that out of it. It is a more powerful chipset than the Steam Deck has. And that counts for something. Does that make it worth $1,000 when a Steam Deck is not $1,000? That is up to you. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I don't think, I feel like $1,000 is really crazy. When a Steam Deck is like, yeah, like you can get the low end kind of still just as powerful, but like the difference, like the non-OLED Steam Deck is like what, $350 or something? Like it's not. It is a fraction of the price of this $1,000 device. And they do have a cheaper version of this that is a slower chipset and less storage space. I feel like the storage space is a sacrifice. If you were going to buy that and then throw a larger SSD in it, you could do that. But yeah, I could not get Keeper to run acceptably well on this device. That was kind of the one game. Like Ninja Gaiden 4 ran okay. I was running the Steam version of that. I ran into multiple situations. Like Keeper is definitely one of them, where I was playing Keeper on the PC, turned all the way up, and then launched it on the Ally, and all my PC settings stuck, and so it was trying to run it at very high, and it was running at like 15 frames per second. So you go into the settings on here, you go into the handheld, you go into turning it down to very low, and you turn on like AMD's frame generation thing, and like I'm basically like trying to lower it as much as possible to get the frame rate up. And there's an in-game frame rate meter there when you're in the graphical settings in Keeper, and I got it to say 60, and I'm like, oh, it's great. Oh, okay. But like the input latency had become so bad with whatever other settings I had turned on, whether it was the frame generation or setting it to very low and all this other stuff, that like it felt like mud. It felt terrible. And then when I went back to my desktop PC, all of those settings were turned on. And so it had been turned down to very low. It had been like all of those settings stuck. And so hopefully that will not be an ongoing problem for them. They are listing games as like handheld optimized in their store, which means they're going to recommend a certain or maybe default install with a certain graphical settings for a game. if they're reporting that. Now, the Steam versions of games are not going to get that, I guess. That is something that the Xbox Store is reporting on and doing. But also, like I said, you know, if I ran into a couple of games that did that, where I modified settings on the handheld and my desktop version installs. When the cloud syncs happened, it ruined those settings over there. So I had to turn them back up, which then thus ruined them on the handheld. And I'm like, this is a terrible experience. That is something they need to fix. With the Steam Deck, I ran into a handful of games. Where that was the case, where like the settings on a game would travel with the cloud save and would fuck up one or the other. But generally speaking, that was not the case. I that's probably just a growing pain in something they need to fix. But we will see. This is an interesting device because, you know, and I think if this had just kind of come out with like very little fanfare and like, hey man, Asus is releasing a new Windows-based handheld. And we, you know, like we put an Xbox button on it, and Microsoft did some stuff to Windows to try to make it better. Like if they had presented it that way, I think that half this conversation would be over already. But instead, you've got Microsoft executives out appearing on television and like there's this big Variety article where they're interviewing Sarah Bond at the New York-based launch event that they had and talking to her about it, and you know, talking about the nature of this device and everything. And there's an interesting kind of like, there's quotes from her in this article that I think when you take them together, and Kotaku rewrote some of this as well when they were writing it up. Like there's like spots where they're saying, let's see, let me find the exact quote here. And some of this, like some of these quotes are about like kind of their next generation hardware. So you know, it is more or less confirming that this is the direction that they're headed in, right? We have our next gen hardware in development. We've been looking at prototyping, designing. We have a partnership we've announced with AMD. We're always listening to what player, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but where there is demand for innovation, we're going to build it. And so like this thing is, you know, like here it is. They're interviewing an Xbox executive about the future of Xbox as it relates to the release of this device, this Xbox device, and this and that, and oh, this is the future of this, and like Microsoft is happy to market and co-market and take credit for this, and you know, say like we're innovating until they ask about the price. Where the quote from Sarah Bond is, we looked at how do we create multiple options for people, and it really was Asus because this is their hardware. And so it's like it's an Xbox right up until someone says, why is this $1,000? And then it's like, oh, Asus made it. Yes. I mean, you know, whew. I think that's really fucking crazy. But like, you know, but I think that is the truth though. This Asus made this. Asus decided when this needed to ship. Asus made all the, you know, like this is like Xbox was a partner here. They came in and said, yes, you can put a button with our thing on it. And yeah, you're right. We should start moving Windows in this direction and we'll start. But they didn't finish. This device is not finished on the software side. And that's on Microsoft. But also, it's a very hard job. So I can't, you know, I can't necessarily blame them for not getting it all the way done here in October of 2025 when it's work that really, 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 really needs to be done about 2 years from now when they start shipping whatever they decide to call their next generation hardware. But they can't have it both ways. I think like getting out there and trying to say like, hey, look at this Xbox, look at this cool thing that we made, and then the minute someone says anything about the hardware or the price, anything like that, they're just like disavowing. It's like, well, Asus. I think that's a really kind of cowardly way to approach it. But it does underscore the part where like a lot of this is not necessarily in Microsoft's hands, right? It's an OEM making a thing. It's a company that makes Windows machines saying, here's another Windows machine that we're making. And then that's it. That's all. If Microsoft hadn't stepped in and tried to market the shit out of it and, you know, like, oh, look, this is an Xbox, like we wouldn't even be talking about it this way. It'd be like, oh, I don't know. It's more powerful than a Steam Deck, but it's too expensive. End of story. Windows is still Windows. It's clunky. You know, you have a lot of stuff to try to navigate around. It's still very clunky. But because they went out of their way to try to put their stamp on this device, suddenly it's like the last straggling contestant in a dead console war or something. You're like, what? Because when you compare this to consoles, it's better and it's worse, right? It's better because it's open. You can do all kinds of great stuff with it. It's worse because taking full advantage of this machine requires a level of know-how that you will not need to play console games. And that is what you need to know more than anything else before making a decision about not just this device, but any device in this space. These are computers. The interface is not there yet. The Steam Deck is really close. But even a Steam Deck, at the end of the day, there's still going to be a few weird things because it's a computer. There's also been some build quality. I've seen people say that the triggers on their devices have shipped broken. On mine, if I squeeze which sometimes you do when you're holding it in your hand, but the right side of it, the plastic is very creaky here in the hand grips. And it makes a note, like I can't, you're not going to hear it in the microphone if I hold it up to it, but it is moving in my hand a little bit when I'm pushing on it. There is a little bit of a creak around the seams on the sides. That's not great. And I think the D-pad is not great for four-way games. I was trying to play Mr. Do on this and found myself pushing in the wrong direction because the diagonals are a little too easy to hit, and I think some of that stuff is funky. Very funky. And that's hey, that is the ROG Xbox Ally X. I think it is a very mixed device because I don't think that, like, if you use it as they like are seemingly kind of marketing it and like, hey man, it launches to the Xbox interface and you've got a storefront and cloud streaming and all this other stuff, like that is going to be easier to use, but you're missing out on so many games and things that way that's an insane, like, do not pay $1,000 for this thing and then use it like that. It's not worth it. Only get this if you're going to use take full advantage of it as a computer and load all the different stuff that you care about onto it and all of that. That's not to say that you need to be carrying around a mouse and keyboard and like, oh, well, I got to Bluetooth this mouse in so I can do it. Like, you can do that. I don't intend to do that. But I think, this is a device for people who know what they're getting into. And I think that, and know that they can handle that as well. Because I think that there are so many rough edges around this experience. Even on just trying to set it up and update Windows, there are multiple spots for updates because firmware and some updates come out of the Armory Crate app that Asus installed. And then Windows updates come from the Windows, like regular ass Windows updater that is built into every copy of Windows. You have to launch that and check for updates and download updates and install updates and like it's that. They didn't make a consoleized version of that or anything. Like, you can still pull up the fucking control panel and decide if you're going to add users and administrators. Like it's Windows with all the great stuff that entails and all of the nightmare stuff that entails. Again, you need to know what you're getting into. Do you want a handheld that comes with Microsoft Paint pre-installed? Maybe you do. And I again, this doesn't change any of the larger conversation about the handheld PC space because I really want to see what this looks like 2 years from now. This very device, as well as, whatever devices ship down the line, but like, I do think there's a way to do this. I don't know if Windows 11 is going to be like, maybe that's too heavy of a lift and they need to actually fork this in a real way and say it's not Windows anymore. It runs a lot of PC stuff, but we had to make some changes to consoleize this stuff. And so you can't do, like there's, maybe there's something more they need to do. But I want to see what that is because I do think there's a ton of potential in like if they can nail the interface, if they can get this to a point where it's like it's the best of both worlds, where it's, hey, we've consoleized this experience in ways that make it easy for you to do the things you need to do around gaming. And also it is still a computer. Like if they can nail that, then I think it's, there's a ton of potential there. But it's still just potential. This device does not realize, this device doesn't do, and there's nothing here, that Windows full screen experience is not a meaningful step forward. And maybe 2 years from now, we'll feel differently about it and go like, oh, well, that was the first step on this journey, really. And, look at where they got to or whatever. But like, there's nothing about this device that you load it up and go, they nailed it. There's 0% of nailing it on here. It's a computer. Let's take our last break here. We'll come back. We'll get into the news. After this. Look, sometimes you eat like garbage. Most of the time, let's say. Is it all of the time? Okay, all right. You might not have the healthiest diet. You might not be getting the key nutrients that your body needs. I know that is occasionally true in my life, which is why it's been nice to have AG1 as part of my routine. AG1 is you get a scoop of it in the morning, you throw it into some water, you shake it up in a shaker bottle, or, I don't know, you're out and about, you get these little travel packs, which are awesome. So you stir it up, whatever, mix it in some water, slug it down, and move on, man. It's clinically shown to support gut health and fill in common nutrient gaps. It's got 5 probiotic strains and 75 plus vitamins and minerals. That's right. AG1 Next Gen replaces the need for a multivitamin and probiotics and more. That's, with vitamins, how many are you throwing down? It's like, here, take 3 of these in the morning and you're walking around chewing gummies and like, it's just like, whatever, man. Let me just throw this back and get moving. They've got new flavors in their clinically backed formula. They've got tropical, they've got berry, and they've got citrus in addition to the original flavor. AG1 Next Gen is helping to raise the standard with multiple gold standard clinical trials. It's an industry where not everyone invests heavily in research, so AG1 is going to great lengths to continually invest in rigorous, peer-reviewed clinical trials. And it's less than $3 a day with a subscription. So you're getting, for that less than $3 a day, you are getting more than $7 of daily nutritional support. And that's nice to just get that in your life. Are you out there looking for a vitamin? Vitamins are weird and expensive, and are you sure you're getting the right one? AG1 takes care of business so that you can take care of your business. And right now, you can get a free welcome kit, including a bottle of vitamin D and free AG1 travel packs. So, it's normally it's like, hey, here's a big, a big old thing of it and a scoop, and you're scooping it out of the thing and then put it in a metal container. But the travel packs are just like tear it open, dump it, go, which is great if you are on the move. Or if you're, in another city, like you're traveling around doing all that stuff, you can still get it in. It's easy. Head to drinkag1.com/Jeff to get that free welcome kit, including a bottle of vitamin D and those free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. That's drinkag1.com/Jeff. Warner Brothers Discovery has announced that it is putting itself up for sale. This comes after a zillion different configurations of the company and mergers and Warner Brothers and Discovery and HBO Max and then HBO Max again. And hey, we're going to split this into, a studio business and a streaming business, which they are still doing. And all of that stuff. There was word going around that potentially Paramount would be interested in acquiring the company. They said to Paramount no, and then immediately said, but we're up for sale. So who knows what that actually means. But they do say that they have received, quote, unsolicited interest from multiple parties for both the entire company and for Warner Brothers on its own. I don't know which business that, like Warner Brothers owns DC Comics. Warner Brothers owns Mortal Kombat and the studio that produces it. They do have something of a gaming division still. They didn't shut it all down. Rocksteady and such. I don't know if that counts as part of the studio business. I assume that sticks with the studio business, and the streaming business ends up carving out into its own other thing. But if they're gonna carve out, if they're interested in entertaining a bunch of different offers and potentially carving up the company, I wonder. Gosh, man, there was a while there where it felt like Warner Brothers didn't want to be in the video game business anymore, and so there was a lot of talk about them selling off all of their studios or trying to find homes for all of their teams, and whether it's like, okay, we're going to sell off. And they did end up peeling off, I think, a mobile game studio ended up going over to EA or something. But they did end up selling like one or two studios, but not all of the game stuff. They do also control a great deal of legacy properties. Like the old Midway catalog became Warner Brothers's at some point. And so Warner controls Spy Hunter and Gauntlet and like Robotron and Smash TV. Like there's just a lot of, and a lot of kind of Sinistar, I believe is like all that stuff is almost certainly still theirs. And so there's this weird pile of old things, which, is kind of an ongoing conversation here about a lot of companies. The kind of legacy things that they just are never touching ever again. And Warner certainly has more, it's more than its share of that. And so you do start to wonder, like, would anyone ever buy this stuff? Would, as they're carving up the company, there is potentially an opportunity for like, hey, let us come in and buy all this ancient video game stuff that you are never going to touch. Like you're never going to make a movie based on Paperboy. Like, what are you doing? Sell us Paperboy so we can make a new Paperboy. It got me thinking, like, man, I had this thought of like, man, Atari should get in there and try to buy up all that IP. Like some of those games are originally Atari from the two sides of Atari, like Paperboy and Gauntlet are Atari games. That because of the, a batch of mergers and sales and all this other stuff in the 80s and 90s became two different Ataris and all that other weird shit. That had me thinking, like, man, it would be cool, like because Atari is in a lot of ways the only company left that is doing anything with any of this ancient stuff. They bought Digital Eclipse and there's a. I guess what I'm saying is get Mike Micah to make a new Spy Hunter. Yeah, I don't know. I would be like, I think that would be at least something would happen with some of that stuff. But also, like, NetherRealm is a Warner Brothers studio, and so what do you do with Mortal Kombat? If they truly decide to start selling the company and carving it up and doing all this other stuff, like, are we back to a situation where these video game studios kind of end up back in some sort of weird limbo with all of this, you know, and that is very frustrating because it felt like that stuff just settled down after years of uncertainty around like what the hell is going to happen next at NetherRealm, and what, you know, what are they going to do? Are they going to do another Injustice, or are they waiting because they don't even know if they're going to be in the same company as DC anymore? Or, you know, like a lot of that, you know, kind of speculation that had been swirling around them. There was talk for a little bit there that I think, I don't know how real the talk was. I'm sure everyone talks to everyone, right? But the thought was like, oh, you know, maybe Microsoft would end up being a good home for NetherRealm, both because Matt Booty runs the studios over there, and he was, you know, he is at X Midway, and also just like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat and Microsoft. There's some kind of something about that where that would make sense in some weird way. But yeah, I don't, you know, that is not going to happen. Or I mean, that basically like that talk all ceased because the Activision thing started. Like Microsoft was busy acquiring other stuff in a way that like, oh, they obviously are not going to buy anything else right now for like antitrust reasons. And you know, maybe those concerns are less concerning these days than maybe they were, but I still don't know that that's something that they would do. But I don't know, like, what would be a home for Mortal Kombat? Like, if another video game publisher had to come in and purchase the Mortal Kombat IP, I don't know that there's any left. Like 2K? 2K is like, you know, they're big enough, and, you know, 2K is fueled by Grand Theft Auto to a certain extent. Capcom. Yeah, Capcom would be, I think, a terrible home for that. You know, like people threw around EA at one point, like, oh, maybe EA picks it up, and, you know, like, but that seemed like a bad idea then and a worse idea now. But, you know, maybe Warner is not interested in selling the video game stuff. I don't know, but it seems like Warner is up for anyone who wants to talk to them about buying stuff. They're open for business, I guess. I don't know. We'll end up seeing eventually what becomes of this. But that was my thought of like, man, like, I guess we've reached a point where like Atari has done enough good, weird deals that now I'm kind of like, man, maybe they should be the company to end up with this stuff, because maybe they would actually honor it and take care of it in some way. The documentaries they could do about Midway stuff. I mean, they have history. They already did a bunch of compilations for Midway back on the original Xbox and all that. You know, like they were there, man. That would be probably an easy thing for them to do. I mean, they're doing that Mortal Kombat collection right now. That's out real soon. That's out next week. I have not seen it yet. I'm curious about it. Speaking of Atari, one of the things they bought the rights to relatively recently is Intellivision. They acquired the rights to the Intellivision name and a lot of the original Intellivision games from the company formerly known as Intellivision, who was working on the Amico console. And depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you they're still working on that. Anyway, at some point they changed their name from Intellivision to Amico because they sold all the Intellivision off to Atari. That is resulting in a couple of different things. Intellivision games are appearing in some of the Digital Eclipse compilations as like a DLC, I believe, in the relatively near future here, if they haven't already, right? It's coming. No, the Namco stuff is coming to Atari 50, but the Intellivision stuff is already there. Is that what it is? Added Stern stuff. Okay, anyway. They are going to produce a device called the Intellivision Sprint, which is a mini Intellivision console that will ship with a bunch of pre-installed games in December for $149. It's going to have like 45 games on it. So if you want to get a device and play Astro Smash on it, they will have versions of the original Intellivision controllers, as well as the little overlays that you would put over the phone buttons on it to tell you what the buttons did in each individual game. Yeah, you know, they've done these things for the Atari. They've done, you know, there have been devices like this for the Intellivision. I mean, there are plenty of like plug and play Intellivision devices from like 20 years ago. But this is something that is, you know, this is going to have the little card overlays and some cool stuff, you know, if you care about Intellivision games. I don't know if you're going to be able to add games to it. That's kind of the thing with the Ataris they did had like USB ports on them, and you could just kind of like do stuff that way if you wanted to. Yes, okay. Yes, it will have a USB port, and yeah, I wonder if you'll just be able to like dump all your Intellivision cartridges and play them off USB. But with 45 games installed, I mean, there's a few. I don't think the Intellivision version of Bump and Jump is on here, which that was a decent version of that game. And yeah, it's, you know, they're making a mini Intellivision, much like they made a mini 2600, much like they made a mini Atari 400, all that stuff. Like it makes sense for them to make this device, and you know, for the people that like Intellivision games. I don't mean that to sound look, some console wars never end, and as much as they like to say Atari buying the Intellivision IP is the end of the very first console war, not with me, man. The Intellivision fucking sucks, and it kind of always did. The only thing I like about the Intellivision is the little dots they put inside the zeros. Other than that, the controller on that thing feels like trash, and most of the games are bad. It's not it was a bad system. I remember my cousin had one and going and playing it, and like normally I'm like, if I'm going somewhere and like someone's got video game stuff that I've never seen as a kid, I'm gonna sit there for as long as I can and mess with it and do everything. I remember the Intellivision being like, let's mess with this. Oh, okay, yeah, fuck this. You have Nickelodeon on your TV and we don't have that yet. Let's go watch TV instead. So yeah, man, I'll put it this, it's no ColecoVision. You know what I mean? Like if we're doing a ranking, it's the Atari 2600, then it's the ColecoVision, then it's the Intellivision. And then, you know, then it's probably like what, like the Fairchild Channel F or something is at the bottom of that list. I might put Intellivision. I might put a Channel F bowling above the Intellivision library. I don't know. The bowling game's pretty good. Odyssey, yeah, the Odyssey 2's in there somewhere too. I don't know. The Odyssey 2's whatever. Yeah. So I don't know. Like they're like against all odds, I suppose. We will eventually get some kind of console device in 2025 with the word Intellivision written on it. But as for the Amico, well, the jury's still out on that one. No, whatever, man. There's never gonna. That's just not going to happen. That's right. I'm out here predicting that hey, write it down. October 21st, 2025. That I said I don't think the Amico hardware is ever going to ship. I don't think they're ever going to actually make that thing. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. The one that sold on eBay doesn't count. The one weird dev kit thing that whoever was selling it said they would not sell it to the haters. The BBC, makers of Monty Python's Flying Circus and The Young Ones, they also report on news sometimes. They have written I'm not going to call it a full expose. It's in a lot of ways, it's more of a recap, but BBC Newsbeat wrote an article about Mindseye from Edinburgh's Build a Rocket Boy. This is in light of, a lot of the layoffs around that. We talked last week about how, there was a union that was basically saying, hey, you need to, you really laid these people off really poorly. Like that, like you need to do this. You need to recognize this union. You need to, admonishing the developer of Mindseye for how they handled things after the release of that game. This is not, like I said, it's not quite an expose, but it does kind of have another bit of story about the dumbest part about Mindseye, and that is Leslie Benzies, the founder and head, or one of the senior heads of the studio, claiming that the game was being derailed by saboteurs. Basically, in the introductory to their article, they're talking about a meeting that happened in July. This is basically 3 weeks post-launch. Addressing staff via video link, the company's boss, Leslie Benzies, assured them that there was a plan to get things back on track and said the negativity they'd seen was uncalled for. Then he pivoted, alleging internal and external forces had been working to scupper the Mindseye launch. Scupper's a very BBC kind of word, if you ask me. He told the assembled workers who'd been informed they'd faced redundancy just a week earlier that there would be an effort to root out saboteurs within the company. And they have a quote here. This is according to a transcript of the meeting verified by BBC. I find it disgusting that anyone could sit amongst us, behave like this, and continue to work here. Staff who worked at the studio say they were stunned, and not only by the strength of the language, they simply didn't believe him. As far as they were concerned, there was no conspiracy, and the reasons for Mindseye's failure were clear. It kind of goes on from there to get into, I think, stuff that, like a lot of us have really talked about and has been really evident from just looking at the game itself. And they kind of go on to say, like, hey, during COVID, like they hired up and the salaries were competitive, and there was a lot of early optimism. A lot of people worked really hard, and then they were forced into crunch near the end of Mindseye once they pivoted from Everywhere, the initial thing they were working on, into Mindseye, which was meant to be an experience built inside of the Everywhere software. They have quotes from people who worked there basically saying, like, every time they tried to raise concerns about the game, they would get laughed at by senior managers, and a lot of cases of, oh man, like, it's always, if you have a ticket, if there's a ticket priority or a bug priority named after you, and you're like the head of a studio, this goes for websites as well. You probably fucked up in the way that you're managing your people. I'll read this bit from the article to give you some insight into what I'm talking about. Staff also accused Mr. Benzies of micromanaging the studio, a process allegedly illustrated in a video update loaded to the official Mindseye YouTube account. It shows the director instructing an onlooker to make a note of an issue he has noticed as he plays the game. Developers say this was a regular occurrence, resulting in what Ben and Marg, who are two former employees that they referred to earlier in the article, claim were known within the studio as Leslie tickets. Another employee also heard them referred to as Leslie bugs or simply Leslie's. Developers told Newsbeat these could range from minor cosmetic issues to instructions to ditch whole missions from the game, and there was an expectation that these would be given top priority. Ben, who's a former employee there, says, it didn't matter what else you were doing, what else was being worked on, the Leslie ticket had to be taken care of. Just a really textbook, like, way to not manage a game or a studio or any of that. Like, if you're just derailing people's work completely because you don't like a thing in the game, like, that's something that you as the head of the studio probably should have noticed earlier. Just to, like, yeah. Jumping in the chat says, I think we found the saboteur. Yep, you nailed it. It was Leslie Benzies the whole time. it goes on to describe the launch of the game and like a launch party and how that was like, this is like the last positive thing that happened at the studio, and how, you know, like now hundreds of people are being laid off. It's a sad story that you kind of look at and think like, man, this seems like it didn't need to go down this way, and that game development shouldn't happen this way. But there you go. Old habits die hard, I guess. Leslie Benzies brought up inside the fires of Rockstar at its worst. When Rockstar was at its crunchiest, when Rockstar was at its like absolute, like when it was burnout central for hundreds and hundreds of people, when they had people who were working in that company jumping off of bridges, when they had Hauser's brothers walking around with people with like mediums holding bottles of holy water, when they were throwing bottles of quote unquote holy water and lodging them behind televisions because that's where the evil energy was. Leslie Benzies came out of that. Do you think that he learned any lessons when it came time to start his own studio? Doesn't sound like it. Because I don't think even Rockstar works that way anymore. I don't know. Maybe there's still a bottle of water lodged behind a television mounted in a corner of the room. That was a fun story I heard a number of years ago. But holy shit. Saboteur. Right? The last story that's been going around, you know, there's like a couple of stories that have been reported and debunked and you know, just like weird stuff, right? There was a quote attributed to Miyamoto about like, oh, it's, you know, like basically people were trying to like bend in a way that said like, oh, the reason why Miyamoto is more interested in making movies like this, you know, Pikmin video or whatever, like it's like, well, games get old and then they don't run anymore. Like implying that like it was bent to imply that, you know, that all, well, movies are better than games because you can just watch them. But the quote was taken completely out of context from some completely other thing, and so like that made the rounds like a handful of times in different formats as people went like, oh, what the fuck, you know, game preservation of this and that, and then like, you know, like, oh wait, he didn't actually say that thing at all. And it certainly didn't happen in the context that it was being used in, and you know, like someone is being really shitty about it or whatever. And then that made the round, I don't know, layers and layers of discourse for social media, I guess. But at the end of the day, like much ado about nothing on that front. The other thing that maybe has a little bit more meat on its bones is that reports went around that Halo, that the upcoming projects coming out of the Halo studio were going to be largely products of generative AI, and that AI was being used heavily at every level of the studio and all that. You know, there was just a ton of reporting around that. It was like both a remake of the original Halo and whatever the next project is. And there was someone who had left the studio who posted like something very, like did some real like LinkedIn style vague posting about like, oh, my time at the studio was this, and I think that it shouldn't be this way. And that kind of got lumped into some of these stories about the AI stuff. That has kind of been debunked to an extent as well, or like it seems like maybe that stuff was poorly sourced. Jez Corden got out there, you know, he's was he Windows Central, and posted pretty definitively in his reporting anyway, to say Halo is not using generative AI in its game development, art assets, etc. for its next game. Microsoft has no mandate on studios to use Gen AI for games. I'm sure it's being used for emails and shit like that, but they're not making a Gen AI game here. Take that what you will. Jess Corden's reporting on Microsoft stuff is generally well sourced, I would say. And it also, you know, my understanding, unless something has changed, is my understanding is that it is true that Microsoft does not mandate its studios use AI. Like they're not going into game teams and saying you got to use this stuff. Like they did that thing with Ninja Theory a little bit. That was more of an experiment of just like what could we use this for? What could we do with this? And I'm sure that there are probably tech teams and things like that are thinking about that, because obviously Microsoft has been straight up poisoned by AI at the highest level. And so, yeah, I'm sure that there's like a lot of experiments and ideas and like, oh, could we use it for this and use it for this? But my understanding is that it is true that there is no mandate that you must use it. I'm sure at a high level, at an exec level, they would love it if you could find a way to use AI to make a game, just because they could use that to beat the drum of AI, because Microsoft has such a vested interest in that shit now. But as far as like the story of like Halo is being made largely by AI tools, that doesn't seem like it's the case. I also don't think that the tools are advanced enough to actually do that. If someone sat down and said, hey, we're actually going to do this, I think they would find them to be of limited use, personally. When I look at what it's capable of and what it's not capable of, and the number of humans you would need to involve in making sure that that work actually worked and was decent and everything else, like, it's just not, like, no, man. It's like the same people that tell you like, oh, if you like AIs will lie to you. Like if they think you're trying to shut them down, they'll lie. It's like, no, it's just stringing words together. It's a fancy, it's like not even like, it's like if you told a friend on the internet, hey man, I'm going to kill you. It would say, please don't. The AI just read that on the internet and just like regurgitates it to be, it's not a real thing. It's not a real thing. I mean, we'll see, right? We'll see what the next Halo, like that doesn't mean that the next like Halo project is going to be incredible or broken or, like there's nothing about the quality of that game in any of this, right? So, or even the nature of those projects. So yeah, I don't, it remains to be seen. I would be very interested to see what the next Halo is going to end up being. I do think that it was an artist, right? It was an artist that I think left the studio and had some really, again, some very vague, but like negative toned things to say about his experience. Like oh, there'll come a time when I can tell these stories, which, is what everyone says when they leave a studio on bad terms, or like leave in a huff or what have you. So we'll kind of see, but I don't think that, again, like just getting out there and saying they're not using AI tools to make this game does not automatically mean that the game is going to be amazing or anything like that. So I'd be curious to know what the heck, especially after Halo Infinite, because, at some point a team thought that Halo Infinite was going to be the answer to that question. What the fuck is Halo? Right? And I think Halo Infinite was really cool in a lot of ways. I think that's the biggest shame about all of this is I think that like Halo Infinite has been kind of caught up in some, like where it gets a lot more shit than it deserves, for stuff that like, oh man, it really, for how they launched it and what it launched as and all of that and the ways in which it was funky at launch and broken in some cases, in terms of multiplayer progression and connections. And like, there was a lot of messed up stuff with Halo that it took them a very long time to get their hands on it and say, no, stop breaking. Like they got it to a place. But it was a fun campaign, man. It was neat. It was not a full open world, but like I enjoyed my time with that Halo campaign. It was a good fucking time. And so, like, I don't know, man. Like it just feels like the sentiment about Halo Infinite these days. And I'm sure that there are people who are playing it and just happily playing it. There are probably people who are playing it who are very unhappily playing it because that's just modern games. But like, I think that there was some really exciting stuff in there. The Drunkest says in chat, that campaign from a story perspective was a massive bummer. Yeah. So I guess from a story perspective, as a sequel to the game that came before it, yes, I agree with you. When we talk about where the Halo franchise was prior to Halo Infinite and the story that it seemed like they were getting ready to tell, it is not unlike Tron Ares, where at some point they said, yeah, it's kind of still about that, but it doesn't touch on any of the shit you care about. Really? Like the Halo stuff, the Cortana stuff that they could have done more with was not really addressed well. And, there's just yes. Halo Infinite did not do the thing you want it to do if you care about the previous Halo story. It left it in a place where I'd be like, yeah, I would maybe, like be curious to see where they go from there or whatever. But like, at the end of the day, what the fuck is Halo? Right? I think we say it with all the time with these kind of like long running franchises that feel like they are now from a bygone era, where we just haven't seen one in a long time. And obviously the corporate circumstances around Microsoft and Call of Duty's influence on Xbox game studios and what they output and everything, there is an element of this is just like, yeah, well, we own Call of Duty now, so I guess our like actual like at a high level, our interest in like Halo as a long running multiplayer franchise is probably not what it used to be, because we own this other thing that is way bigger. So what the fuck is Halo? Right? Especially in a world where Call of Duty is creeping into the future again. You know what I mean? So yeah, I that is a question I would very much like to know the answer to. Like, what do they think the future of Halo really is? And I think they're supposed to be teasing something pretty soon, aren't they? But yeah, man, there's still a Gears game in the works that hasn't. I mean, does that even have a? Does that even does Gears of War E-Day have a? No, I guess it's just 2026. They haven't really given it a proper release window or date yet. That's another thing, man. I don't know. Like that's always the question, right? But I feel like enough time has passed, and games and the types of games, especially in the action space and the shooter space and the multiplayer shooter space, like that stuff is so crowded and so much of it has changed that like the idea of, hey dude, here's a new Gears of War, like, is that something people want as a competitive game? I mean, like the campaign and, like I would be up for a new Gears campaign if it's like fun. And certainly the co-op modes in a Gears game have been wonderful at times. But like competitive Gears in 2026, what the fuck is that? Like I felt like Gears Reloaded, the Gears 1 remake, really came and went. It did not lead to a resurgence and people going like, hell yeah, Gears multiplayer, right? But in a world where, like you've got people trying to make this extraction shooter shit happen, and Battle Royale has kind of, come and become the I guess the biggest multiplayer mode in shooters right now is still technically Battle Royale. What are you gonna do with your 4-on-4 shotgun rolling simulator? Like who wants to do that, right? I played some Arc Raiders. I forgot to mention it at the top of the show, which maybe that tells you everything you need to know about what I think about Arc Raiders so far. But Arc Raiders seems interesting, and Arc Raiders feels like another game that underscores this concept of like, oh dude, I don't think I'm ever going to like a game like this. I don't think these games are for normal people. It was more of a feeling of like, this seems well made, and fundamentally, I don't think I want to do this thing. Of like, hey, here's we've I think if you boil down extraction shooter into like, hey dude, here is Battle Royale, but with more stakes. Like, hey, it's not just you get sent back to the lobby. You get sent back to the lobby with none of your gear. And so the loop becomes you go out there and you try to find a bunch of shit. Here's some wires, and here's a tin can, and here's some blankets, and we're going to bring all this stuff back and craft a bunch of garbage. Here, you made a gun that's not fun to shoot. Have fun with that and don't die, because otherwise you will lose the gun that is no fun to shoot. If you stay alive long enough to harvest enough shit, maybe you can make a gun that might be worth shooting. But don't lose it. That's not for me. I think it's kind of how I felt with the marathon beta thing when they ran that a while ago. And Arc Raiders was kind of another, it's more about self-realization, I suppose, for me, about like, because I think the genre, when you describe it, I go like, oh yeah, okay. And then I play it and go like, oh dude, I don't want to do that. None of these guns are fun to shoot. Like for the server slam that they did over the weekend, they filled people's inventory with a bunch of, what seemed like low-level items. And my reaction to getting those guns and going out into the world and shooting them was, I don't like any part of this combat. I'm shooting some drones and some, there's some AI-based enemies in there, and you kind of want to shoot some of those and get some more gear out of them. And like more and more, it feels like, hey, this is a game for people who want to dedicate all of their time to a thing. And if you get really wrapped up in that economy of scavenging versus crafting, and if you get really deep into that with your crew, then I think there's probably a whole lot of fun to be had doing that. But I think a lot of it is like this realization of just like, you know what? These games just feel like gambling. You know what I don't especially like? Gambling. I don't think that tension, I don't think the additional tension of like you're going to lose the stuff you have equipped is a draw for me. Like that is more of a like I don't want to dick around with this. Like this is I don't want to lose and then have like nothing and then be like, oh, well, you can take the free loadout if you don't have any gear. You're like, okay. Is the free loadout good? No, it's not. It's not good. Oh, well, that's fun. It's like their equivalent of making a driving game where the cars drive bad when you crash them. It's the reason why developers don't do that in big mainstream hits anymore is not just the licensing of cars. It's the, hey, driving a car that can barely go is not fun for people to do. They want to just finish the race. So we're going to smooth that out for them so that you can just drive the car. So yeah, man, I don't think that Arc Raiders is for me. I think that it seems well made for what it is, I think, but I think that there's just I don't think that's for me. And furthermore, as I look at it, I don't think that genre is something that's going to like people. If developers are coming at it from the perspective of like, oh dude, we're going to make the next Fortnite. This is the fertile ground that we've been looking for. Battle Royale is so saturated, but this thing is fucking awesome. I think that thing is awesome for a not a mainstream level subset of people. I think it is an awesome thing for like a much smaller number of people than these games are getting budgeted at. And maybe Arc Raiders will be the one to prove me wrong, but because it does seem like people are enjoying that game in a much larger scale than, I mean, certainly Marathon, but like Tarkov. I think Tarkov gets a Tarkov has a very specific reputation, right, as being for like fucking malcontents. Like the people who like Escape from Tarkov are disgusting. They're bad people. They probably smell weird. Like the Tarkov, like Tarkov has just such a weird rep to it, right? And I think people see that and go like, oh, dude, Tarkov isn't even on fucking Steam yet. Like, like Tarkov is such a niche of a niche of a niche. if we made the mainstream take on that, it could be huge, and it could be the next Fortnite, it could be this. But I think that, like, you're gonna, for the same reason that Call of Duty gave you XP to think about even when you lose, I think the idea of real loss inside of these games is going to be a major turnoff for a lot of people. I think that there's just a certain type of person who is not going to come at these games seriously enough to play them properly, and they're going to fucking bounce off it immediately. They're going to be like, oh, what the fuck? I lost all my shit. Dude, fuck this. And that'll be that. But again, you know, maybe Arc Raiders, for whatever reason, will catch on. I'm playing it. Like, I don't think I like the look of the guns. I think the outfits and some of the other stuff that they have in Arc Raiders is kind of cool. Like the art style of it, I think, is good. But that's kind of all I would say about it. I don't know, like, from a technical angle, it's like, it's fine. It's, you know, there's stuff there that's fine. But I don't know. Other than I think the art is cool. I don't know what the actual appeal is to that game over other games of its ilk. Is it just that you have a chicken and the chicken scavenges low-level crafting materials for you in between runs, so that when you get back to your base, the chicken's like, I found 8 wires. Like, I don't know what the fucking deal is with that shit, man. But hey, we'll see. We'll see, man. That game's out. Again, that game is also out next week, so we'll see. Seemed like a whole lot of people were playing it for free. We'll see how many of them got the bug and want to follow through with it. But I don't know. The only moment, the only like moment I had playing that game over the weekend that I feel is like worth talking about, where I had one thing where I was like, yeah, I had gone and I had found a bunch of fucking wires and shit, a bunch of garbage that I was like, well, I don't know, like it wants me to have 6 wires for this mission that the lady gave me at the base, and I've got that now, I think, so I should probably leave. And so I went and I found an elevator and went to go get on an elevator. And when you trigger the elevator, it takes some time for it, you know, like these games all do. You go and hit the button, and then time has to pass before the elevator opens up and you can leave, just like with a helicopter coming in to extract you, or whatever other games in the genre have done. So I hit the button and I go hide in a bush, because I know some dumb fuck is going to come try to kill me. As the elevator is getting there, I emerge from the bush, and someone from the other side of the elevator is tall. You can't really see around it. Someone must have seen me or something. They throw a grenade my way. And it comes over and it explodes. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? There's somebody here. So I go around the other way. I shoot him a bunch with a gun that, like, it shoots 5 times and then you have to reload it, but it shoots full auto those times, and then you have to go through a long reload process before you get to shoot it again. So it was like a really dumb fight that I had with this guy. But I ended up dropping him, and he doesn't drop, like, there's a down but not out system in the game. So you knock the guy down and he's crawling around. I run up to him and I keep shooting him. I'm like, I need to take this guy out all the way. What the fuck's going on? I shoot him a bunch. That doesn't do it. There's like, when you get up close, it says hit the square button to knock him out or whatever. I hit that. Nothing happens. I hold it down. Nothing happens. Turns out the process is you need to mash the button to fill a meter before you'll hit this guy and actually kill him. For whatever reason. All the while, he is crawling onto the elevator. Because you can do that, apparently. If you're down, you can still crawl into the elevator, and you can still hit the button on the elevator to escape, which I'm sure would be a very thrilling escape if you successfully did that. So he's crawling onto the elevator, and I'm still trying to figure out how to fucking kill this guy. I'm like, do I shoot him a bunch? Like, the gun takes forever to reload, so I'm not going to waste a bunch of bullets trying to shoot him. I don't know, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I need to mash this button, I guess. And as I figure out, oh shit, I need to mash the button, he is reaching up to push the button. And I could have just let him extract with his stuff. That would have been like the nice guy thing to do, right? Like, oh, we both get to escape with our things. But that motherfucker threw a fucking grenade at me. He could fucking eat a dick. So I fucking killed him as the game was fading out. as the elevator was getting ready to start fading out, I fucking ended him. Fuck him. If that was you, fuck you. You didn't need to start shit. If you didn't start shit, there wouldn't be shit. We could have both walked onto that elevator. That would have been that. So that was kind of cool. But it emerged from like the controls being fucking weird, right? And not know, like, okay, I got to mash this button to get him and whatever else, and all of that. So that was like the one thing I did that I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, fuck him. But then I got back to the base and it was like, here's, you found your wires. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I got my wires. Now what? Go out and get more wires? That was also my last round in the game. I was like, okay, good, cool. All right, done. Quit. Why don't we take a few emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send me an email right now. If you send me one right now, maybe I will read it next week. But let's see what we got here. From folks over the last week or so here. I need to look this up real quick. John from Greece wrote in. Okay, yeah, this is something that The Verge is reporting. The price of an Xbox dev kit is going up. They were $1,500. They are going to be $2,000. The Xbox dev kit is you can develop Xbox games on a lot of different things. The Xbox dev kit has a little readout on the front of it. If I remember correctly, it has a little LED readout on it that'll tell you the current frame rate and some other kind of performance metrics that you can get on the dev kit without having to necessarily build those sort of things into the game itself. That's effective immediately. They are saying it is because of they issued a development they issued an announcement to Xbox developers that The Verge got to look at. This is not like a public facing thing. It says the adjustment reflects macroeconomic developments. We remain committed to providing high quality tools and support for your development efforts. Yeah, I mean, there are going to be tariffs on those as well, right? So it's kind of par for the course. I wonder how many Xbox developers are developing fully on Xbox dev kits. I would assume that a lot of development is just happening on PC. And then when you start optimizing specifically for console, you maybe want to move to kits. But I don't know. I don't know how much of that just exists on a PC today. If you can just kind of do a lot of that work there and kind of move it over. No, I'm sure it's more complicated than that. Anyway, John from Greece writes in and says, I just saw that they're raising the price of the dev kits. At this point, I think they're trying to sabotage their own brand intentionally. For whatever reason, they don't want to say they are dropping Xbox like Sega did with the Dreamcast, so they decided to increase all their prices to what they know are unreasonable levels and let the market kill them naturally. What do you think? I think that tariffs and I think exactly what they said, that the macroeconomic environment is dog shit. Like it's, there's a lot of fucking shit happening external to Microsoft that is also impacting a lot of this stuff. It's why the ROG thing is $1,000. It shouldn't be. There's no universe in which this device should cost $1,000, but here we are anyway. And so I think dev kit costs going up. The developers that are probably using a lot of those kits are, a lot of them probably have them already. This late in the generation, I wonder how many dev kits they're even selling these days, especially to larger, like the EAs of the world. Like how many more dev kits do they need? Are they spinning up new studios all around the world? No, not really. They are occasionally, and so maybe they do need to put in an order on an annual basis of like, oh, we need another 50 of these. But to a company the size of EA that is buying dev kits in those sorts of quantities, like it's like, I don't know, whatever. It's just part of the budget, right? If you are a solo developer, then I wonder if you even need one of those things. You can get a console and flip it into dev mode and do some work there. You can do work on the PC. I don't know enough about current methods of Xbox development to know exactly how many of these things a small developer would even need. The answer might actually be 0. So, I guess my short version of this is I don't think it matters. We're late enough in the generation that most people that are going to make games for an Xbox already are, and they already have these dev kits. Who cares? And that the same reasons why all of every other piece of technology costs way too much money now is also going to impact stuff like dev kits. You could say, oh, well, Microsoft should just eat the cost in order to facilitate development on their console. We're super late in the generation. They're not out there advocating for, like, you need to be making games on the Xbox Series X. What do you do? Have you heard of the Xbox Series X? We got a dev kit that makes games for it. It's a brand new console. Like, it's out there. It's established, you know? Like, they're not in that part of that phase of the generation where they're doing that level of advocacy. You know, they don't need to. And so at the same time, I would also wonder who is buying a dev kit in 2025 to begin with. Let's see. Troy from Atlanta writes in and just says, I'll just buy video games. With the most recent hike in Xbox's subscription pricing, I'm feeling now more than ever that I made the right choice in canceling all these subscriptions some time ago. I'm so tired of subscriptions for everything. I'll just buy games outright. I know that I still technically don't own the digital games, but at least I only have to pay for it once. Do you think more people coming to this conclusion would be better or worse for the industry as a whole? Probably better. I mean, you know, like if a developer can sign a Game Pass deal and get some money from that, and then also still sell copies of games, then maybe that's the best of both worlds in some sick way. I don't know. But yeah, I think, you know, like, developers set their price, and if they can sell copies of games, then great. I think one of the big benefits that you used to talk about with regards to Game Pass and other subscription services was this idea of word of mouth. And if you were launching on Game Pass, you would have a lot of people playing and talking about your game. And so that might help fuel purchases on other platforms if you are making a multi-platform game. For smaller studios who have to pick and choose where they port their game to begin with, I think a lot of those smaller studios are only porting to Xbox if they know they can get a Game Pass deal in the first place, because otherwise it might not be worth it for them to prioritize Xbox over PlayStation or Switch. So I think that is a bit of, I don't know. I don't know that I have a great answer to is it better. I think it's probably better for the industry if we move back to buying games. Because I don't know that word of mouth is going to happen one way or the other anymore. It's felt off for a while now with, like, Game Pass launches, especially for multiplayer games like your FBC Firebreaks and your Anacruzises of the world. That, like, those launches didn't necessarily seed the community in a way that led to more sales of the games themselves, especially if they were to exit Game Pass or what have you. You know, Remedy just had to issue a profit warning about FBC Firebreak, and they launched on both Xbox and PlayStation's subscription services. So it feels like the word, especially, you know, maybe it's just also a factor of multiplayer gaming, and you know, like, people have their multiplayer games that they like to play with people, and they aren't all looking for new games, you know. And so it's entirely possible that FBC Firebreak launched, and even people who would have liked it maybe never bothered to play it because they're playing fucking one of the 9 other big multiplayer games that are out or something. You know, I think there's you run into situations like that as well. But I don't think Game Pass is a viable, like, I don't think Game Pass is like a recommendable thing at this point. And unless you're such a highly specific type of player who wants to play, like, X number of games and this many of this, and you care enough about this and this, and, you know, and you're going to definitely play this number of day one games every year, and that you're counting on Microsoft to go out there and not only continue to ship games that are of high quality, but also to do good deals with third parties to get their games to launch on the service, which doesn't feel like it's happening. Like day one launches on Xbox haven't been, like, especially from third parties, have not been the biggest games. The biggest, like, mainstream hits or whatever, right? Like Pal World, I think, eventually became obviously a massive hit, and that did well. Clair Obscur was a good choice for a Game Pass kind of thing and what have you. But like ultimately it comes down to just like, I think you have to look at the first party output first and foremost, and because that at least you can rely on for being a day one launch. And then you have to look at the rest of it and go like, maybe they'll get Monster Hunter. Maybe Monster Hunter will be a day one game, and whatnot. But maybe they end up in a situation like that where there's some big multiplayer game that they get on day one. They published Ninja Gaiden 4. Like that is an Xbox game. That is Microsoft published video game right there. So that is on Game Pass. Keeper obviously is on Game Pass because they own Double Fine. And then Outer Worlds 2 is still coming up from them as well. So, like if you can count on your fingers and do the math and figure out they publish enough games every year that I would buy. And if you can get to $360, then maybe Game Pass is still a value for you. But I feel like you can no longer make that assumption. In some weird way, I feel like the latest Game Pass price hike puts video game reviews back on the table. And I remember reviewing like Crackdown, like the last Crackdown and some of that other stuff, and being like, this seems pointless because you should probably just subscribe to Game Pass anyway. And if you're subscribed to Game Pass, you should play Crackdown. Is Crackdown a good game? No. Is it something that you should fuck around with for a few hours because it's just right there and you might as well? Yes, absolutely. And so by virtue of Game Pass now being a very shaky proposition, game reviews are back, baby! Just in time, too. Video game journalism is saved. I'm getting word now. It is not saved. Shit. Fuck. But do I think, do I think this is better or worse for the industry? I think for, like it kind of doesn't matter. I think it's going to head in that direction no matter what. And I think that, maybe more people just buying games ends up being a better thing for a lot of games, but it is still a highly competitive landscape out there. And so, we do come back to this question of like, how do you break through the noise? There was a story that I saw earlier this morning saying that like, there are like 5,000 games on Steam that launched and didn't sell enough copies to make back the $100 that Valve charges to publish a game on Steam. And some of those games don't deserve to make $100. Some of them are, hey, we republished the Unity tutorial for the 800th time on Steam. Congratulations, it's a new record. There's a lot of hobbyist projects and stuff that show up on Steam because someone just said, fuck it, man, I got $100 and did zero marketing, and it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's on Steam, but like, it's not, it's not serious people trying to sell a video game and trying to make a commercial product and try blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's kind of a different, some of those games, like we're never going to make that $100 back. But that doesn't necessarily, it is still the problem that it is very difficult to kind of cut through the noise with a brand new video game. And that is still kind of a larger issue. David from Texas writes in, I mentioned this at the top of the show, and yes, I told my friend yesterday that Double Fine released a new game last week and he was shocked. He had no idea they were making a new game, much less releasing one last week. Taking a look at the low count of Steam reviews and general buzz, it seems like it's an extremely quiet launch all around. What I wonder is how much of the Game Pass shenanigans a few weeks ago might have affected this. The game feels like it's straight out of the Xbox playbook of a few years ago, an indie darling released only on Xbox and PC that's primed for Game Pass to help elevate the platform and show off the variety of games that Xbox is investing in. Obviously, that's not the plan anymore. The plan now being to release on as many platforms as possible. But I think that would have typically happened. There's a ton of Game Pass people playing Keeper, generating a lot of buzz and elevating sales off Game Pass, including PC. Now that a lot of people have canceled their Game Pass memberships or downgraded their tiers to not have day one releases, which I don't think that's actually possible yet, because I don't like the change doesn't roll out until, is it November 8th or something? Like, we're still a few weeks off from the service actually changing, but it is, yes. The general hype feels gone, and as a result, it feels like no one is really paying attention to this short $30 adventure. It didn't really occur to me how the Game Pass changes could affect game launches for smaller games, but I wonder now, how will this affect those types of games in the future? Yeah, man. So yes, I do think that, like, it's funny because Microsoft has dominated a pretty large percentage of the discussion, like the news type discussion around games, because they've been, they've got their fingerprints on this handheld thing, the Game Pass news, and they're launching 3 games back to back to back. So like these last few weeks have been like, there's been a lot from them. But the other thing I'll say is that like I said, it really feels like that they did not promote Keeper. Pat Bear in chat says Double Fine promoted the anniversary of Brutal Legend more than Keeper. Yeah, like I definitely saw more posts from Tim Schafer and the Double Fine stuff about like, hey man, we're online playing Brutal Legend right now because it's the anniversary, than anything about Keeper. Lee Petty made the rounds on some podcasts, which I saw, if I had known that Keeper was coming out so soon, I maybe would have asked for one of those interviews, but didn't think to, because I had no idea that Keeper was coming out until like so close to like review copies had already gone out, and I knew that people had Keeper, and I was like, oh shit, Keeper's out? And then wrote to them and said like, can I get a Keeper from you? And they said, oh yeah, sure, here. I'm like, great, okay. And I reviewed it, and that was that. But yeah, it did not feel like there was some big push in the lead up to Keeper. It feels like that they got on their Summer Game Fest, their thing, their stage show, and Keeper was shown there. And I remember looking at it and going like, man, that lighthouse can walk. What the fuck? And then that was kind of it. I don't think I've heard anyone mention Keeper until I realized like, oh God, it's out. It's coming out. It's like 4 days. Like, what the hell? Like, Keeper is almost out. How did that happen? And now it is out. So, I don't know if it got caught up in like, hey, these other games are coming out and there's other announcements, or just like the Microsoft, information communication lanes got clogged with all of this other stuff. But yeah, it really feels like I would not frame it as Keeper was sent out to die. It was more just like Keeper was sent out, and I don't think they ever really spent a lot of time marketing it. And hey, I will grant you that a trippy game about a walking lighthouse is maybe a little difficult to market. But when you've got Microsoft people out there going like, and I saw this yesterday. They're like, we set a Guinness World Record by taking off in helicopters and projecting Ninja Gaiden 4 onto a big screen between 2 helicopters. And you're like, what? The fuck are you talking about? It's Ninja Gaiden 4. Like, what? Why did you got So like in the midst of all of that shit, just be like, what are you even talking about? And then Keeper just off to the side, just kind of shipped. It's a bummer. I don't know. I think Keeper is cool. More people should know about Keeper, and yeah, but yeah, it really feels like that there was no one out there to remind people that Keeper existed, let alone was just about to ship. And I don't think Sometimes I feel that way and I catch myself and I go like, is this just because I am so much better at ignoring marketing and because I don't see a lot of advertisements for anything anymore? Is this a me thing because I've removed myself from so many different spots where normally I would see ads and now I do not anymore, and I'm just not seeing ads for Keeper? Like maybe it's everywhere and I just don't know. But I've heard this from a handful of people that like, hey, Keeper just existed. And it's like, oh, by the way, Keeper. And yeah, there was a handful of interviews with Lee Petty that went out. They had Tim Schafer giving people demos of the game at Gamescom. And so there were some, I believe, some hands-off reports based on seeing the game at Gamescom. But Pat posts on the Discord that the Double Fine account on Blue Sky posted, in case you missed it, Keeper has awakened. It's available right now. It even seems like their account is like, dude, hey, Keeper, we're alive over here. We're still the studio. They 25 years. 25 years Double Fine has existed. They just hit their anniversary. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that I was 25 years old when they founded Double Fine. But I guess when I think about that, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. That was kind of a long time ago. Good on them. Now I hope they get back to the work that truly matters, and that's Trenched 2, Drenched, the underwater sequel to Trenched. I think that there's a lot of stuff you could do with salutes on the, not just the analog triggers, but maybe you could have a 2-part salute that also uses the analog sticks. I just think there's a lot that could still be done there. Just tell Bradmere to stop playing Dota or whatever it is he does for Valve. I think he just is a professional Dota player. I think he won the international last year. Get him back down to the Bay Area. Trenched 2. Or Iron Brigade 2 if you must. But god damn it. Cody from Roswell writes in and says, I was wondering recently about the GameFAQs acquisition. Do you remember the vibe of it at all from your side? Are there any stories you can tell about those times? As a GameFAQs enjoyer, I remember being pissed, but then again, I was a teenager then. Cody, Cody, I think I've talked about. So this is at some point GameFAQs was acquired by GameSpot. We bought GameFAQs, and I was not directly involved in any of that, but I did have some say, I think, on how some of that went. And the thing I'll say is that I myself, and I was not alone in this, but I don't know, like I think that we were we did not take the GameFAQs community very seriously because their message boards were so bad. But they were bad and well trafficked and well populated, and like the people who used them really liked them. But I think we kind of looked at it as like, ugh, this is like a dumpster. Like, what are we like? And then came the time to like, oh, we've got to merge all these usernames into one account because we would like these people to use GameSpot as well. And at the time, we had to figure out how to merge these two user bases, and like, oh, some of these people have this, like, some of these names on one message board are taken over here, and so we did some really careless shit around merging usernames. And people were pissed, and I think eventually changes were made because people were so pissed. But I think we were on our side of things. It was very much like, well, I don't know, we bought that thing, like, well, just fucking, I don't know, change it, like, whatever. I don't think any of us, at least on the editorial team, I don't know. Like, what was GameFAQs? It was dipshits posting Luigi ASCII over and over again. It was like, fuck this. This is trash. Like, what are we, like, how many meetings are you going to have about, like, how much to care about these fucking people? Like, what are you doing? That is the wrong approach, to be honest. Like, we should have had a better, stronger community team in place. And we did have, like, the people that we had doing community on the GameSpot side were busy doing community on the GameSpot side. So it wasn't like they had a ton of time to do all of that stuff and care about all of that stuff, but it all kind of got thrown together and dumped in people's laps and whatever else, man. But yeah, it was definitely like a, like the facts are what matter. Like, I don't care about like all the esoteric message board rules and all this fucking horse shit. Like, I cannot care, and I cannot be brought to care about any of that. But it was not like I wasn't necessarily involved in the decisions either. But when asked about it, when people were like, "Oh, here's what the problem is," I think I was very much in the camp of just like, "Fuck them." Like, what? Who cares? What? Why are you asking this? Who cares? Careless is how I would put it on in some ways. And we should have cared more about it because, you buy it for a reason, right? And if you buy it for a reason, and the reason is because it gets a lot of search traffic and forum traffic. I think, as I've said before, traffic to message boards is worthless. And it was for years and years by that point, because no one wants to buy ads on a message board. They wanted to buy display ads on pages that matter. And people posting fucking ASCII Luigis, no one fucking cares. No one gives a shit. So, and then you get into the other problem of like, oh man, all these GameFAQs exists as text files and you can't put ads on those either. What have we done? And what we did is we bought a thing, and it's why why websites end up. It's why it ended up being GameFAQs.gamespot.com, is because then you can go to ComScore and you can say this is all part of GameSpot, and by buying GameFAQs, and it's artificial, right? But like the traffic to GameSpot suddenly shoots up overnight because suddenly you're redirecting all these people onto a GameSpot.com domain. And that's what it was all about then, was like trying to get your ComScore number up and all that shit. So that's what they cared about when they bought it, was getting that lift out of it. It wasn't like, oh man, what do the people on the message boards think? It's like, as far as I'm concerned, the people on the message boards were problems, because every time the message boards on GameFAQs were brought up, it was someone saying like, you realize someone's selling drugs on one of these message boards, right? Like, there are a zillion message boards here and we can't possibly police them all. So someone is literally dealing drugs out of the GameFAQs fucking forums. And you're like, what? Shut them the fuck down then. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Again, how much time are we going to waste with this discussion? Like, what are you telling me? Shut it down. And so, yeah, it was just like, it was a bunch of fucking crazy shit like that. That happened multiple times, if I remember correctly, where people had found some, because people would go, because since there was a message board for every single video game in their database, a mistake that giantbomb.com would later make, it was a zillion message boards that no one ever looked at. And so you had people who would go find a game and go like, I'm claiming this message board for myself. And they would start their little clubs on these message boards and never talk about the game. And I think our approach to that was just like, no, like, these posts should be about the game. Like, well, fuck this. Like, this don't, like, if someone ends up on this page and they're looking for help and they just find a bunch of people role playing as fucking robot cats or whatever the fuck's going on here, or selling dope, or like, what the fuck, dude? No. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, it was a lot of shit like that. That is my memory of the GameFAQs acquisition, or just like being a part of GameFAQs in general in those early days. And GameFAQs came a long way. And, like, GameFAQs, like, dude, like, GameFAQs was the most profitable fucking part of the company for a lot of years, because it was like two people. It was like Alan and Jeff just running that whole fucking thing and building it and whatever else. Like, they were the only people affiliated with that site for years and years and years and years and years. And so, like, when you think about the money that was spent on maintaining it and the people that was, like, it was fucking, like, percentage wise, it was off the charts. And so, yeah, I don't know. And they, they found ways to go like, okay, we're going to embed these text files into wrappers so we can put ads here and do this. And, they modified the site in ways that made it able to monetize a little bit better. And now I can't imagine that anyone cares about it. I don't know what the fuck fandom is going to do with it. Probably nothing until they find someone to buy it or find a way to, like, they'll fuck it up in their own special way, right? Like, they'll find a way to trash it. They'll find a way to go like, oh, we're going to put all these facts into, we're going to feed them into AI. We're going to launch a fucking the fandom wiki thing that is just going to scrape all our wikis and game facts and make one big AI thing that will ruin all of our traffic, and no one will ever use it, and it'll suck forever. And yeah, I'm surprised that hasn't happened already. It seems like the type of disaster bullshit that company would be very much into doing. Let's see. Randy in Portland writes in and says, should we be eulogizing Xbox? Is Xbox the console dying? Is Microsoft pulling a Sega right now with hardware price increases, Game Pass price increases, getting booted from retail stores, and not to mention Microsoft's dealing with Israel? Public approval seems like it's an all-time low for them. Beyond public opinion, they've set themselves to be arguably the least financially viable choice for console gaming in the current market. Do you think they'll make it to the other side of this and have another generation of consoles? And do you think they care? Phil Bosch in the chat says, my Series X does feel like an urn. Yeah, fair enough. Don't pour ashes in do not vape into the top of your Series X. No. Is Xbox the console dying? Sure, I guess. Is console as a concept going through something right now overall that is going to have to change? And are we going to have to rethink a lot of this stuff from the ground up? And Xbox is the one that is in third place in so many different ways. And so they are going to be the first to go, fuck it. Here's what's next. I don't know. Yes. That's why they have a handheld out now that is so confusing, because they're trying to take steps in what they view as their new direction, but none of that new direction is ready yet. And so we have this handheld thing that is a fucking weird mess of a device. Now, if they get all their ducks in a row and they figure it all out, and here's what it means to be an open PC, and we're going to call this Xbox, but really it's just a window into a Windows computer. If they can figure that out, I think that, they'll be onto something and they'll make it work. But that's a very big if for reasons we talked about earlier in the show. But like the Series X is not like, some amazing platform. It hasn't been for a long time. It's plenty powerful. It is not as powerful as the PlayStation 5 was most of the time. And the PS5 Pro is certainly like an inch or two beyond that. And Game Pass really did a number on, like Microsoft loved to say like, oh, actually the people who subscribe to Game Pass buy more games. But I don't think that necessarily stuck with it as Game Pass grew past a certain point. They probably reached a point where it's like, oh, like the reputation for Game Pass became, oh, you get people who go buy a Series S and then they never buy a single game. They just subscribe to Game Pass. They never buy anything. And thus, if you're making games for multi-platform machines, it is a waste of time for you to make it for Xbox. And that's why we've seen, not publicly per se, but, I think anyone who's been following this business closely and is reporting on it has heard from at least one third party, large or small, that has been like, yeah, I don't think we're going to make games for Xbox anymore, or we're really reevaluating our relationship with Xbox because we're just not seeing the sales there anymore. In terms of like, you can talk about install base of hardware and whatever else, but at the end of the day, if you're making, I don't know, Gotham Knights, and, the vast majority of your copies are moving on PlayStation compared to other consoles, you do have to sit down and wonder, like, what am I doing? Like, the amount of work and the amount of money it takes to port this game to Xbox in the first place, like, is it worth it? Are we making our money back on these Xbox ports, or should we just walk away from it completely? And no one has really pulled the trigger on walking away from it completely. You have some Japanese developers that never really got there in the first place, or they only got there because there was Game Pass money involved, which led to a situation where developers started to hold out deliberately because they knew if they did so, eventually Microsoft would show up and go like, all right, how much do you want? All right, come on. Yeah, we know we're going to get, yeah, okay, fine. Yes, Persona will come a year later, like all, but yeah, we need, I mean, we'll fund it. Fucking, we'll put it on Game Pass. Like, just, come on. And so I think you had Japanese publishers that would kind of, be able to exploit that situation for their own gains when it came time to finally port their games to Xbox, and get money out of them that would make it worthwhile, worth their time, right? So that's not a healthy environment overall, right? For development on that console. And I think that there's just been enough different little stories like that have piled up over the years that you just go like, yeah, man, like maybe it's not worth it for some of these companies to put their game out on Xbox at all. I don't know. Fighting games traditionally do better on PlayStation than Xbox. And so I don't know what the numbers were. I don't know if the business backs this up. It's a large enough franchise that it probably does, but like, are you going to put Street Fighter on an Xbox? Did they, like, here's a much larger question. Did they put Street Fighter on Xbox? Like, I assume they did. And I'm like, wait, yes, they did. But I literally, in the middle of putting that anecdote together, in the middle of thinking about that, I was like, oh, maybe Capcom didn't. But no, they did. You can get Street Fighter 6 on an Xbox for $40, or the version with 2 years of DLC for $60. But Street Fighter 5 did not come to Xbox because Sony funded it. It's the same reason that the Tokon Marvel thing will probably never come to Xbox, is because it is a Sony funded project. I kind of do wonder, do you think the Xbox version of Street Fighter 6 sold well enough to warrant that development? It's Street Fighter, so you would assume so, that it's, the sales are such that it's gonna break through and make its money back and whatever else. But I don't, but those are the sorts of questions that I think that like people are running into, especially with some smaller games and what have you, like what's going on. And that's been going around for a while, just kind of swirling around Xbox conceptually. But I don't think we should be eulogizing Xbox, because I think they're just transitioning into another phase of existence. They're going to the farm upstate. No, they're going to try this PC thing. They've signaled enough times that the future of Xbox is on an open machine, and now we have in our hands the first example of a partnership around that. Like I said, I think that the Xbox Ally X is a pretty shitty first step when it comes to making Windows into something that is more console-like. I don't think they did a good job. But also, I think I have to imagine that they know that. And I have to imagine that they know that there's a ton of work for them to do in order to get that to the place it needs to be. For them to eventually sell a console that hooks up to a television that is also using some of these same concepts of creating an open machine and using AMD hardware to do so. And, if they're going to let people run Steam on a console, on a television device, I don't even know what to call it, because console has such a specific definition, I feel like, right now. But I think we will get to a point where that definition, much like this is an Xbox and this isn't an Xbox and all this other stuff, is a fuzzy, strange thing. Like, right now, it's all still new. If they get all their ducks in a row and they actually fucking nail it, like, then I think that it's the difference. As I've said before, this is the difference between, are they getting out of a race early because they've lost, or are they getting out of a race early because they are racing to what they think the next battlefield is? And if they think that the future of it is going to be these open PCs and that everyone's going to kind of move in that direction, and that maybe Sony will eventually be caught out there if they ship a closed system the way they always have, because suddenly the next PlayStation will not be as capable. Except that most games get ported to PlayStation anyway, so maybe that's not that big of a deal. I don't know where you end up with that. Again, I think that they're making these choices because it makes sense for them to make them, because the Xbox The Series X console is, if not at the end of its rope, it is just about there, right? You know, we were 2 years out from new consoles, just about, if the talk is to be believed. They've, you know, they have not broken the PlayStation's stronghold on the console business, certainly not the Switches. And so they need to change it up. They need to be much like when they launched Game Pass. They need to start figuring out what the real fight is and start the new fight for market share, for whatever else. And it doesn't always have to be a fight. It's like they just need to figure out, like, what's a thing that people might fucking want. And that will reconfigure many parts of their business, right? Around, like, where do they get the 30%? How do they get their cut of, you know, like, if I buy an Xbox, whatever the next Xbox is, if I go and buy it and I hook it up to my television and then immediately install Steam on it and never look back, what does that mean? Do they lose money on that device, or do they charge so much money for them so is that they're, if they realize, like, oh, we may never make our money back on the 30% of software sales or whatever, so if we're not going to do that, then we need to charge an amount of money for this hardware to make sure that we get it there. So will those things be super expensive? You know, there's a lot of ins and outs that I don't even think they have, like, firm answers to right now, because they don't quite have to have those answers today. But they need to figure it out. I look at it more like that than about, like, the eulogy or the end of Xbox or what have you, right? I think no matter what happens, Microsoft will still be involved in games. You know, they still make DirectX. They still, like, make technology that game developers have to use to make games in Windows or otherwise. And so the presence of an Xbox as a closed platform console hardware, blah, 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 that doesn't matter so much. In the grand corporate scheme of things, Microsoft is never going to be completely out of the gaming business. They're never going to completely run away and just go, all right, Windows is just for spreadsheets now and nothing else. Fuck off. Like, that's not feasible, right? And I think it would be hugely negative to the game business if they, for some reason, decided that, right? If they went tomorrow, like, hey, Windows 11, much like Windows 10 is now done, Windows 11 is now done, and Windows 12 doesn't do any of this shit. Which, man, maybe they would, you know, maybe they would go like, fuck it, we're only shipping ARM devices now, I guess. And I don't know what the long term of that shit really ends up being, you know, but it would be bad. It would be bad for Valve. Like, if Microsoft woke up tomorrow and said, yeah, fuck games. You know, that would be bad for everyone involved in video gaming, you know. Let's see here. Alex from Lowell. You've talked about how games should, specifically in the AAA space, think about scaling back to help lower the cost of development, but also shorten development time. Often I hear games that have scaled back to being described as PS2-esque, usually in a positive way, meaning it's complete and the gameplay wastes no time getting you right into the action. Could we see AAA developers scaling back and aiming for that PS2 vibe? Or more importantly, will the general gaming audience accept these similar experiences? Will the general gaming public accept scaled back video games? That's an interesting question. I think that's something that no one really has the answer to that right now, because I think that is wrapped up in price. If the next Last of Us game came out and it was a third of the length of other Last of Us games, but still cost full price, what impact would that have on the sales numbers for that game? Also, remember that a lot of those games they made the assets for it, and stretching the game out to 20 hours instead of 5 or 10 or whatever, there are assets that they get to use again. There are things that, you know, like they're coming up with new twists on things, and there are new tile sets, there's new environments that need to be made, and biomes, what have you. but the engine is already done. And so I don't think the cost is necessarily completely wrapped up in, depending on the game, right? But the costs aren't always wrapped up in the length of the game. And so it does become a question of like the scale and scope of a game, of like, hey, this game has fewer set pieces. It has fewer crazy one-off moments of like, oh God, this building collapsed and now I'm running through it because it was really expensive to make that sequence. And so, do we end up with games that just don't change up enough over their length? Because that would, I think, be a problem, right? Yakuza does a great job. The Like a Dragon games do a great job of like, hey, we're going to reuse this whole ass environment because it's the same city, goddammit, and we redecorated it because it's the 80s, or, like whatever, right? They do a fantastic job of that, and Spider-Man used some of the similar like New York stuff between like, was it 1 and Miles Morales? Certainly, but like, didn't 2 also use similar layouts? Because at the end of the day, it's all New York, right? So yeah, I think that there are a lot of different ways to tackle that question, but some of the ways you would tackle that question impact the games more than others. And it's not as simple as just like, we made a shorter game, thus it costs less. Like, yeah, you'll have fewer voice lines, I guess, if you make a shorter game, right? You'll have, there are a handful of things that change when you just don't have as many of a thing, but you still have to make the engine, you still have to optimize the engine, you still have to have graphical bells and whistles. If you're asking me like, hey, what if games just looked worse and they didn't spend as much time taking advantage of all of the, hey, reflective puddles or, whatever horse shit, right? Maybe that saves you some time because you have to optimize a little less because you're not pushing the system as much. And maybe that saves you some time there, as well as some time making those effects. Ray tracing in some ways is supposed to make that stuff, easier for developers to implement, right? Because ray tracing is just a concept of like, oh man, the rays trace, they do what they're supposed to do because it's like light, dog. Yo man, it's like light. How light works? We kind of made that. As opposed to having someone sit down and go, okay, we're going to manually light this entire scene, and we have artists that come in and make sure the lighting is this and that. Like that's, there's maybe cost differences there. But I think if you go too hard into smaller experiences and you keep charging full price for them, I think that ship has largely sailed. It would take a lot to get consumers to, I think, accept that. But if you were to go like, oh, and some of this is stuff that like, as the kind of NVIDIA, texture compression and some of the other stuff that they can kind of do on the fly here, like if you're able to generate your textures at a lower resolution because that the magic of DLSS is going to just sharpen them up for you, then maybe you don't have to spend as much time making incredibly high res textures, right? Different games are going to have different issues though, right? I mean, different engines, different everything. So, I don't think there's like a one size fits all way to describe this. Because things that might save one game a lot of money might not touch another game's budget at all. So it's a hard problem from that perspective. But a lot of it does just come down to, can you just downscale? Yeah, downscaling. Can you just make a game at a somewhat lower fidelity, maybe fewer kind of bespoke moments that require you to make a bunch of do a bunch of high fucking intense work on a scene that lasts 4 minutes. Like, we spent all this time on this truck sequence and this on Nathan Drake on this train costs fucking 80% of our budget because of how crazy it is, whatever it is. But like, could you do less of that? Maybe. That's going to do it for the show. Thanks everybody for writing in. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. So come on through, send me an email. And we'll talk next week. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know. We'll do something with some video games. We'll do we'll hang out on a Wednesday and see some video games or something. Maybe play some Ninja Gaiden 4. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, for here, for now. And I will see you soon.